Hello, everyone. Just waiting for a couple more to join now. I think that's everyone that was in the chat. Yeah, everyone's here. I know a couple people
Hi,
are
everyone.
going to be coming. We're going to get a recording going if Esteban. Do you want to record it again? Yeah. All right, cool. What we're gonna do is, so if a couple people haven't been here before, a couple people aren't gonna make it. We know that we've got a couple messages from people, but what we're gonna do is same thing as before. It's just a case of starting off and allowing people to just come on, say what they think. Everyone has their say. If you don't want to speak about the novel, obviously you don't have to. But we're just gonna start and like have people come on, express like so everyone gets their opinion across, and then we can all just either go back to the Patreon hangout like we did last time, the normal chat room, or we can just get everyone on stage here. So, because our thing is out now, our video, apologies by the way, it was supposed to be out a little bit sooner, but the encoding went wrong. Who wants to start off? You can talk about whatever you want. If you've read the novel before, if you haven't, if you want to talk about how it's relevant to today's society, which I'm sure we're going to get to in a moment. I'm going to bring Esteban, who's requested to speak.
Is Leo as well?
Hi, hello
Esteban, you're in.
everyone.
I don't know how Leo keeps getting on the stage, by the way, but Esteban, welcome to the stage.
Yes, hello everyone. Yes, and yeah, I'm so excited to talk about it since this is a book club first for me, as this is my second read of Brave New World. And and because I remember I read Brave New World in high school. Funny enough, the that semester, like, it was in English class, and in that semester in English class we read Brave New World alongside Orwell's 1984 and some Shakespeare plays that included Romeo and Juliet, The Tempest, and Julius Caesar. And funny enough, in a coincidental irony, I was thinking a lot about those works as I was reading it, not only because like there's clear references to Shakespeare in particular, but also just in the way of science fiction and of how now looking at it in the lens of me having my own perspective on society and of the world and of like how I live my life and my perspective on that, it was a quite satisfying read for me, in the sense that, like, in some parts, yeah, it's like oh my god, someone's like understands me, but also in the sense of an interesting perspective of thinking of everything that has gone on in my life, and of maturity, of how I view life and how I view, of especially, like, I think the main thing I was getting at was just that idea of the individuality of a human being. And that's the main takeaway I take from this entire book, is really exploring the idea of what makes someone truly independent and truly idiosyncratic amongst everyone else. And ultimately that's what I take away from it in a very personal level, I think, where it's kind of a story where it's like it's like there are characters, but like it really is just about the world. And what I take away from it, where like the world, like they say a world is a character, and like the world is a unique character in how it's portraying ideas that you really have to search on your own what you don't like about it or what you do like about it. And I like knowing that now, and like have this being a great refresher for me, and really I get to revisit the world and see how much has changed since I last read it. Because admittedly, like this was a point, like when I first read it, it was a point in my life where I wasn't really thinking about those topics when it comes to how I engage with
Yeah,
art. And now
yeah,
having this, where it's like, I think the main thing I always go into with any art is to truly have an emotional experience with it, and to see what I connect to and what I really have, like, not in the sense of like relatability, but in the sense of like what truly I connect to and what makes me think about it. And there's like, yeah, I think individuality is one thing that was constantly brought up, in how, as someone that has always thought about this idea of me having to be like just be more natural and be more authentic. It kind of was this very strong story about that I really got out of it, as well as like a lot of other things about desire and pleasure and the idea of standards and a system that is like one that is quite it's all about veneer. It's all about the veneer of things that, like, it might seem like there's nothing wrong, but there's a lot that you can criticize. And as much as like there was points where in my life I did have annoyance of this idea of fake authenticity, and like I still do, I have that sense of angst and like all this stuff that I just get frustrated with, is also a unique thing about how I think everyone, no matter how, I guess how savage you really are, there's always a
Mm.
point of self-reflection, and I
Well,
really
let me
appreciate.
try and let me try and bring in George as well, because he's requested, and I just want to get a
Yeah,
few
sorry.
people's different perspectives. No, no, it's cool. So, George, I'm going to bring you in, and Leo, I've seen yours there, and you can come in.
Yeah, but like, yeah, like, long story short, I really love this. Like, it really was like, oh, what the hell? What the fuck happened? What the fuck? What the fuck happened?
Into that call. Sorry, guys, it was my fault. I was trying to change the permissions and I think I disconnected. Is everyone back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Almost.
Sorry,
Wait,
sorry.
let's
Why
get
is Leo
George
still here?
back in, and Esteban was there.
Yeah, I'll leave the connection as it is because
God,
The
what
world is
alchemy are
too
you
brave.
using, Leo? Why are you
My
still
fault.
here?
Wait, what?
Like, Leo, you have some
George,
sort of alchemy that you're using.
Oh no, it's literally I have somehow in the perms I'm able to come up. Hi J George, you go. You go.
I think you're muted.
George, you might be muted.
No, he's not muted.
We
It's just
we
his
still can't
audio
hear your
is fucked.
microphone.
Try again.
Snack that smiles back.
Censorship is strong today.
Technology. I mean,
Okay.
pointing now. Wait, can
Well,
you move down?
no, it's fine. It's just come from him.
God.
Very, very convenient how things just start to get censored at this point.
Mm.
But I mean, one of the reasons that we picked this book as well was I think I do believe that it is a very prescient book, and there is the obvious thing. I know that people talk and just throw around this term that, oh, we live in a brave new world and whatnot. And I do think that it diminishes the actual depth of just how prophetic I do find the novel. And it is something that in our conversation, it was something that I wanted to try and avoid as much as possible so that we can actually speak about the novel as a novel. But it is very difficult to speak about it not as a reflection to our world. And I'm actually quite interested to hear, if it was people's first time reading it, or if people have reread it. I'd like to hear people's perspective on that. Jay is going to come in and
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can finally hear you.
Yay!
I changed some cables.
Go ahead.
It's normal. So I've listened to the first 2 hours of the analysis that you dropped on YouTube, and someone in the comments said, "Okay, the title of the video is Everyone Belongs to Everyone, right?"
Yeah.
So someone in the comments said, "Wait, isn't everyone belonging to everyone a good thing?" And I think, like, have you read the fucking book? And here's the thing, and like, so like the book is like the perfect encapsulation of like how little individuality we have under like this hyper capitalist system, one sec, under this system and whatnot. And like this idea, of course, like we should have like some responsibility towards other people in our lives and all of that, but we cannot like is completely limited by the other, to the point that you cannot have your own ideas, you cannot have your own voice, you cannot have your own way of life. And I guess being like some of the ambient that I am, like being in college right now, I feel like my individuality is really being attacked at the moment. Like every time and of course I say we don't need to belong to everybody. We need to like just be like we need to have like basic like respect towards other, but we still need some sort of sovereignty of yourself, And about pleasure, about book we are talking about pleasure a lot. Like that's one thing that I struggle with a lot too, because I was thinking about Leonard Cohen's, surprisingly, about some Hallelujah in particular, because it really encapsulates that like his battle with like his like sexual desires and like his need for transcendence quite a lot. And like I guess we all have to at one point like this type of battle inside of us. We want to have like the Somicide blast, like also like decide that can give us like Shakespeare, that can give us John Coltrane, that can give us Leonard Cohen, And but yeah, I think I also think we kind of need to have like both sides fighting within us, like to have some like bigger clarification of what being human is. That's my piece. Said.
That's a good point. Jay, you wanted to come in. I'm sure that you're going to have a very interesting point.
No.
Path. Okay.
It's not interesting. Sorry, I just wanted to add to what you mentioned, that to the rereading it and being more influential than it is, because it was my second read as well, and I read it, I don't know, 5 to 10 years ago. And I thought like, I know everything about the book. People bring up the book. I'm like, I know it's about this conditioning and there's savages and blah, blah, blah. Like I assumed I knew, like I have an idea that I always knew what people talk about when they talk about it. But this time reading it hit me different as well. It's like after the COVID, after everything else, it's like, it's way more depressing and sad than it actually is. And all the details are super genius and sad in all the different ways.
So, I mean, I can't remember. I think it might have been you, Jay, that actually brought because I wasn't as familiar with it, with the Doors of Perception. And I don't know how much we mention it on the video, but the struggle that I have with Huxley is his personal life, in that when you watch his journey as an artist from Brave New World, in which the vision seems so clear, to The Island, which is his final novel, and I see a man where all of the issues that exist within the world of Brave New World, it's as though he's trying to still incorporate them into our world now within The Island, and as though that is his version of a utopia. And I find it interesting that when he creates a world that's so violent, and clearly he has enough prescience to recognize that there are things in science, there are things in society that people are trying to instigate and normalize, and they're causing these massive issues. And I just find it a bit odd that whether it is, I don't believe it's a narcissism side of him, but is it still like is it still something about that human yearning for pleasure, for desire, that just makes us keep constantly leaning into our vices, that perhaps, there isn't a third option. The only option, like George said, that we have these two sides of us. There isn't a third. We just kind of have to decide which one we want to pick, and both are quite extreme in and of themselves.
I suppose the struggle is also part of the way in which we proceed to become an individual, because if we didn't have the struggle between the two sides of the hedonistic side that we all have inside of us, and this like super order that we want to, I don't necessarily think that we need a third. I think that the struggle is enough, and being aware of the struggle might be enough as well to form us as individuals. I was thinking about this yesterday because we spoke for a long time in that video, and we covered a little bit about our feeling stories, like Huxley in the end of his life, like writing The Island. But I also think that his use of LSD particularly is more to do with his openness to mysticism and spirituality
Mm.
that goes beyond just pleasure.
Mm.
Like I think in a way is a earning for something spiritual, and then when I was reading bits of the Doors of Perception, I felt that for him in a way that was a spiritual quest, but like not even spiritual, say a mystical quest in a way. Edward just said that he agrees. I think that more than just like, I want to trip or I want to be inundated with pleasure, sensorial pleasure. It was more like searching for something beyond human, but not in a transhumanist way, more in like a spiritual way or mystical way.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
So,
Edward, welcome.
Hello. Am I heard? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, good. Yeah, I'm not super educated on Aldous Huxley as an individual. I've read some about him and his brother and his family. I guess without pushing into that too much, the topic of the psychedelic use, I think you absolutely can regress into hedonism when you use those type of substances. I don't believe in like what the during the 60s and 70s, the counterculture and the boomers believed that if everyone just took this, man, we'd have like peace on earth and utopia. I
Yeah.
absolutely disagree with that. I think it could become absolutely abjectly worse and absolutely hedonistic, because not everyone's pursuit while taking those is a spiritual pursuit. Without being too personal, like my personal uses of it have rarely been for recreation or enjoyment. It has been to break any kind of, conditioning that I grew up with, that I was having a personal difficulty, shaking myself out of. I think that you can delude yourself and trick yourself into some kind of truth that isn't there, that encourages some kind of underlying belief you already have, and you can believe that dream you go through, that illusion, and further deceive yourself and find no truth within it. Whether he did or not, I had read The Doors of Perception years ago, so I did kind of retouch in it recently. I didn't have time to fully read all of it. But his description of it, his description of going through those kind of experiences, just the eternity in a moment, the rapture, the beauty of it, so on and so forth. And yeah, you question like, why don't people do this all the time? It's because he answers exactly because you would never want to do anything else, and there's plenty of things that must be done in order to live and survive and be part of a community, so on and so forth. And I think that if you get lost in that, you can kind of make this own little monster inside of you, this narcissistic monster. Yeah, I lost my train of thought there, but I found that interesting. I found it interesting also, though, like, well, also the comparison of like a soma to like a psychedelic.
Yeah.
I do know people that there is never an inkling of a desire to go into yourself and search for some kind of self-truth or universal collective truth. It is purely for that experience, and it absolutely is just frying your brain at some point, to some extent, warping your any sense of reality that you're living in soberly or not so. I have too much to say about what is soma, though, in other types of drugs, narcotic wise, television wise, pornography wise, so on and so forth. I found it incredibly interesting that the character of the savage, in my ignorance when I was reading this, I thought Bernard was going to be this main character, and I was glad that he wasn't, because he was incredibly disappointing. So when he was like halfway through, kind of brushed aside, I was relieved to find this new person. But I found him strange. I guess there's too much to unpack that. I'll let somebody else talk. But like his character of like is like puritanical in a somewhat obsessive way, because of his disgust with society and what he came to see, and with himself and the things he saw around him. But it almost creates this absolute and antithetical spirit that can be just as hostile and violent and unkind to humanity, with or without our imperfections. Yeah, I'll come back in a minute, but that's all I gotta say with that.
No, that's really cool. That's very, very insightful way of looking at it, actually. I do think that ultimately, yes, I think I'm going to assume that most people here probably don't like Bernard as a character. I don't think he's particularly very likable. I think that his role in the novel is to assimilate, and we discuss in the actual discussion that Luiza and I had, is that his resistance only seems to come at the point that he's unable to assimilate, because at the moment that he has even an inkling that he's able to be like everyone else, that's what he's yearning for. He's not after actually he's not after dismantling the system. He's just interested in being a part of the system.
Oh
But
yeah.
what I also think as well is in relation to the savage, I think ultimately, like you say, that he is quite puritanical. There is an extremity to his character, but ultimately we I'm assuming again with Huxley, but I think it's made quite clear that the savage is the moral character of the novel, and his way of the two is the more quote correct way to live if we had to make a choice.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I
Nah.
think like Bernard, like definitely like yeah, I think like I'm with you. Like yeah, I wasn't really into Bernard, but like I do think he is the most relevant character when it comes to
Yeah.
talking about a very significant part of our current 21st century reality, in the sense that I feel like there is this sense of people that I think they do have all this pent up hatred and angst within them, but either they do nothing with it, or they just try and brush it off and act like they can just go on like without any sort of consequence. Like they could have they could easily try and actually change themselves and make them have a bit more of a self-reflection, but I feel like there is a lot of people that live in worlds that they say like, here's all this stuff that like it seems very harmless. What could be so wrong about that? And people just go along with it. People go along really easily with a lot of things. And that's why like I think probably my favorite chapter in the book, like my favorite sections was like 10 and 11, when it's like the one time in the book where we have this sense of like it's almost this cliche of like Bernard going up to the director and thinking like, I am
Yeah.
like going to go up there and like I'm gonna act like the hero. And it's like when the director like first goes like, Bernard is someone that's gonna be this guy that's rebelling, is like transgressing against the system. And then like Bernard has this Uno reverse card going like, here's this like director that is like
Yeah.
actually the one committing the sin. And like after this moment, it's like Bernard is like this hero. It's like, my God, Bernard got everything he wanted. He is this person that like quote unquote is this man that went against the system and made it better. And
I
now
don't
it's
even
like
think
he's
he really wanted that. He just completely flips, in my opinion. He's like, oh man, the popularity, the women.
like, yeah, like I don't think so.
At first he's
I'm
okay.
saying like that's like the veneer of what I'm imagining in his thoughts. Not that that's what it actually what he would actually think about. I feel like he does have those thoughts, but like he only has them as a way to probably just go back in them to try and imagine like a different perception of like, maybe what I'm doing is wrong, so maybe I can just go with this method instead. But it's a sense of like not really committing to the bit. But I think what truly like in his subconscious innate desires that he will always go with is that he's always someone that is like someone that is staying in the norm and likes this type of satisfaction that he has. It is this very rose tinted world where like he has the victory and like he gets everything he wants and he likes it. I think he really likes it. And eventually once that moment happens in those chapters, I feel like that's the moment when I think any semblance of a true authenticity of what he said to Lilina, of how everyone is happy, and like the sense of like this true happiness, something like he might actually have something sincerity, something that sounds a lot like what the Savage John would go to on to say later on in a more authentic and primal manner. I feel like there is a moment of that, but like it gets completely lost. And thus I feel that's why I think like it's so interesting, because I think this is something that isn't really that discussed a lot, because it is something that not many people are willing to think about, because it is this going back of, hey, like, this doesn't seem so wrong. They're not doing anything wrong. They're not doing anything wrong, you guys. Well, maybe like, of course, we all think like the state of the whole system might be wrong. You know, there's not even that sense of like even asking that very broad question, because what is there to complain about if you are someone that gets all this satisfaction, which is like a drug, very easy to get into.
What I find interesting about Bernard as well is this idea that like that scene where he goes up to the director and it's like a got you moment. It's still like, I mean, as you said, the system only persists because all of the denizens allow it to persist. Everyone just everyone is going along with the plan that's put in place. And even Bernard, when he goes to the director, I get the sense that like his act of transgression, I still feel like it very much fits into the civilized society. I feel like it fits into the Brave New World. Is that
Yeah,
he's not going to go there and call him out. It's a case of, oh, I'm going to prove to everyone here that you're a father. It's like that's the worst thing. He's still doing it in the lens of what the Brave New World, like that's the only form of transgression that could exist in this world, in the sense that it's not even a transgressive act in and of itself. It's still all part of the plan, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
In regards to Bernard, I was kind of reminded of the Underground Man, our discussion of that one, because
Okay.
he's a character who's very discontent with society,
Mm.
but of course he doesn't do anything to change that or anything. He kind of gets off on just the fact that he disturbs people. But like you don't entirely blame him, because like everyone else in the society, he was conditioned at the factory. I find the character of Helmholtz interesting too, sort of an interesting side of Bernard, where he's also discontent, but he's not as unruly as Bernard is, obviously. He's this character who is incredibly intelligent, and being a professor of emotions, he understands emotions very well, and like he knows that there's something else, there's something more to being human. But again, due to his conditioning, he doesn't know what. He doesn't know what he wants. And that's one of the aspects I really liked about the book, is who I call the three misfits, which are Bernard, Helmholtz, and of course the Savage. And I like the different shades that they represent of, just feeling like they don't belong in the society, or feeling like there's something more to being human.
Mm-hmm. Can
Yeah, I
I say
found it
something on Bernard?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Of course. Go ahead,
Oh,
Leo.
okay. So I liked Bernard as a character. I mean, I didn't agree with him, but I related to him up till the end, where basically there's a line, um, it's when Helmut and John become better friends with each other. That basically where it literally says like he was ashamed of his jealousy, and alternately, he made efforts of will and took soma to keep himself from feeling it. And that like shame is what I thought made him a tragic character. But like by the end, you kind of realize the only reason he actually the only reason he actually like goes against the system, and the only reason it's the same reason he goes against the system is the same reason he ultimately reinforces it again, which he wants to feel self-important. He just wants he's like too caught up in his own selfishness. Um and the thing is like I think Bernard is an interesting parable, because like I feel like it kind of mirrors some of the stuff I grew up with, in terms of like when I was a kid, I was like very primely autistic, and like I was very like dismayed, not necessarily angered, but not necessarily like an unwilling participant in like various activities, various social activities, right? And I saw myself as someone who I just felt naturally that I was someone who was like different from the crowd, and I accepted that. And that gave a good happiness, but like coming adolescence, I'm starting to care more about if I'm going to be financially successful in life. If I'm going to be, do whatever like they tell you to do in society, which is basically make money and breed. And like this is what rushes into my head. And when I realize, with ADHD, there's so many, I start like buying into the mythologies. And I feel like a big part through my adolescence is like I started romanticizing the idea of like normal people or um the idea of like comfortable people. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? Which is I saw something as like a goal because why wouldn't you want to be comfortable? Why wouldn't you want to be like uh in balance with the world around you? You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be an outsider, you don't want to be weird. Like my obsession with mainstream hip hop in my adolescence, and like it's weird because I hated that shit when I was a kid. But when I started like listening to Playboy Cardi in like mid high school is when the moment I started fantasizing like, like social college people who go out to parties and who enjoy themselves. And I think that's what I'm saying is just the narratives of comfort are strong, and it's so interesting that the book is able to like highlight these things. My thoughts on the book in general, oh my god, I was just blown away. Like there's so many takes on this server were just expertly highlighted by this book. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
In terms of
Mm.
like I almost have to apologize because it's like I was rebutting against stuff that I feel like this book gave me context for, and I just it's become so clear. Like you and Lewis and Louisa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys were when we had the conversation about what was it? It was like you said something on the acid episode about like the like furries being degenerate or whatever, and I was like, wait, okay, is it necessarily as like more harmful? Okay, but more
Mm.
important, I was like saying something about like a lingerie fetish or whatever, and like, oh, it's not that, it's not, isn't it comparable? But what I'm trying to talk about is this take on sexuality, right?
Mm.
I was trying to reconcile like, okay, well, we live in a liberal society, we all kind of have our freedoms. We all kind of dictate our own lives. Shouldn't you be able to pick if you want to be like sexually degenerate? And I kind of, I guess, had this impression that like some people were just that way. Um,
Mm.
but when you really think about it, like early chapters in this book, right? There's the character of not Linda, what's her name? The Lamina.
Melina.
Lamina, right?
Mhm.
Lamina has this moment in literally the third chapter of the book where she's talking to it was like I forgot her name, Sophie
Fanny.
or
Funny.
Fanny. Yeah, they were talking to Fanny, and they were just having this little conversation about like, oh, I want to stay with Bernard because like he's cool, but he's like, no, 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 and Fanny's like, no, there's like he's a weirdo, he's like a freak. You gotta like go for someone new. And this kind of mix like the pressure, the social peer pressure of like sexuality, right? Which I'm sure a lot of young people go on. And there are two statements in the book that really enlightened me. Okay, it was ending is better than mending. This idea that replacing
Mhm.
something, pursuing something new, is better than making something stronger and fixing something. And the other one was it was another one of the propaganda statements. It was ending is better than mending, and it was everyone belongs to everyone else. The literal title of everyone belongs to everyone else. Everyone belongs to everyone else. This idea of like um why is she agreeing with Fanny that like Bernard is a weirdo, right? Why is she starting to agree? No, it wasn't Bernard. It was another guy. It was like the Henry or whatever the idea is like why is it such a big problem? Why is Bernard or I thought it was Bernard, it might have not been Bernard, but like why is Bernard such a big problem? Why? Because he's old and I can't accept his um his imperfections. So it's I can't accept his imperfections. I will be promised something better if I pursue something new. and
Mm.
everyone belongs to everyone else. It's this idea that like my self-worth is determined by my sexuality, by like how many mates I can acquiesce, right?
Mm.
So why is sexuality a problem in society? It's because it kind of gets us to treat each other like shit, right? You know what I'm saying? It gets us to treat each other like shit. It literally gets us to like fucking value each other by not like anything deep. It gets us to treat each other like meat. And when
Yeah.
it gets literally meat. That's the conversation, the talking point they use in the book. It's why is it so bad? It's because sexuality is like it's a passion. Literally, it overrides the senses, right? It gets you to think of something very. The person doesn't become an end in themselves. They become an end to the mechanical, fucking Gigeresque concept of sexuality, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that was like really, and that was just like early in the book. That was like the third chapter. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's all I was saying. Or
Yeah,
not.
like,
That's
Yeah.
really cool.
Amazing.
Brian, go for it.
All right, so this is my first time reading the book. I've heard about this book for ages, you know what I mean? And I tried reading it once on Kindle, but I can't get into the Kindle like reading on the
I
phone
remember when I
and
used
stuff
to
like
have a
that.
Kindle.
No, I don't have a Kindle. It was a Kindle app, but yeah, I couldn't get into it.
Like,
But
I actually had a Kindle for like a couple years, and I read books off of it.
well, congratulations, I could never do it. I could read comic books on the phone, but not what's it called. Books. But anyways, there's so much I have to say. Like I don't even know where to start with this book. I really loved it. First of all, you know, what I mean, I read it like pretty lightning fast, which is rare for me. But what's it called? I guess I don't know. First things, with like Soma, I think Edward was talking about it. How he was talking about psychedelics and stuff being like this numbing agent. But I think one that gets overlooked a lot is like how strong like marijuana is now. I mean, I live in California, so like everyone is like smoking weed and is in like this crazy haze. Like even like my siblings and stuff, and like they're just like comfortable like with their like doing nothing. Like everyone's like high all day now. And then like another one is like I think gets overlooked is food. You know what I mean? That's I mean in America, you know what I mean? It's so like addictive. There's like fast food everywhere. You drive down, there's like food fucking everywhere. People are like gorging themselves and getting that stimulus and then with like the sugar and everything and then they get high and then they're just in this perpetual state and then you talk to these unhealthy people and then they're like in denial. They're like, "Oh, I'm healthy. The doctor said I'm healthy." I'm like, "Whatever, whatever you
Oh
say."
yeah, oh yeah. My dad does that. He eats like shit, and he's like, "Doctor says everything's fine." I'm like, "He's only reading your vitals, dude. He's not reading other things because blah blah
Yeah,
blah." Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
even
yeah.
people that have like good metabolism, like those like are pretty skinny all the time. Like a lot of time, like when I see them eat, they just go and eat fast food, and because like they probably
Yeah,
have this arrogance where it's just like, hey, like I'm always gonna be like skinny. I'm always gonna have a skinny appearance all the time, so I could just eat whatever the hell I want. And like I
exactly.
see that a
Arteries in your
lot
heart.
from people.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, it's true. And then with the everyone belongs to everyone else, you could equate that to social media, how everyone puts their life online, even the dumbest menial stuff like, "Oh, I just ate this," or "I went to the grocery store," or whatever the hell that really no one cares about. I remember when Twitter first came out, and like I was in high school and people were talking about it. It's like, did you see this person put like, "Oh, I just finished a sandwich," and they were like, "I don't give a fuck if you ate a sandwich." But now it's just like that's all everyone posts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just like everyone's giving insight to their whole life, and then you could go back to that OnlyFans girl that had slept with like 1,000 guys. You
Literally.
know, it's just like holy fucking cow! Like nothing is sacred anymore. We got like, and we're like and like the kids being desensitized to death. And we're like, when the internet first came out, like we had like faces of death and weird things like that. But now like there's death all over Twitter. You know, little kids are like super desensitized to it. Yeah, yeah. I remember like some nephews and stuff. They're like super like don't take death seriously because they're so like removed from it. Even if they see something like normal, I see like some of my uncles showing them like brutal stuff, and they're like don't care. I don't know. It's pretty fucking sick, but I
Yeah,
don't
like
know.
I think that's because like of the internet culture, like especially of a hedonistic culture, it's become normalized now. Like I remember
Yeah.
modern example. I remember on New Year's Eve, my mother, like my family and I were watching something, and there was like this like televised program of like the best of 2024 New Year stuff, and all it was just stuff that happened on TikTok. It literally was just like it was a televised mainstream news thing, and all the vernacular and all the subjects they were talking about was this degenerate corporate lame stuff that doesn't matter at all. And it's like that was the moment that it was a revelation, because I don't watch cable TV that much, rarely. And like, you know, even my mother, which like I remember my mother like during like the Christmas holiday was very into this like it looked like AI. It was like this like fucking like credit card AI like commercial with Santa that was like a reference to Saturday Night Fever. And it was just like this thing where like again it was like this fucking thing that like was just so it was so cringe and so poorly done, and it's like it just felt like garbage. And like, you know, even people like her would like eat that up. And like even her that would like that, she couldn't handle it. She knew that this type of TikTok mentality of these like quick type of like dopamines, like it literally is like an epitome of like a social media dopamine of these small bits and pieces of very trashy stuff that is just all the time there, just of this
I
stimuli that doesn't really matter. Like when I saw that on TV, I realized like, yeah, this becomes normalized, and it's just something that I'm always like so confused by. But I know that
Not really,
a
though.
big like, yeah, it's like I know like it's easy. Like I wish I could be blissful and think like, why is this seems inhuman, but I know the reason, and it's
Oh yeah,
quite
I think yeah.
it's just so difficult. Like when you watch the stuff, like there's a bit in the novel that I mentioned in the analysis that really sticks with me. It's when Linda dies and all the children come in with the eclairs and they're eating eclairs over her, and it's just like this constant oral fixation that people have. And if you apply that to television, it's just the same. It's just this like instead of mouth pleasure, it's just eye pleasure. It's just the same thing as colors and lights. And it's why I think Soma is such a powerful concept in the novel, because within the novel, it's from everything. It's from your morning coffee to an orgy to ice cream at a show, and it's just constantly just feeding you something like, you like this, don't you? And it just puts you in a pacified state, and it's so uncomfortable reading the novel. And I'm sure I'm not the only one here. Everyone can think, God, I can see my loved ones and people that I really care about going through the motions that I see the characters of this novel also going through. And but I just also want to say, Soma is good for business, according to Jay. I just also want to say,
Soma's
Tyler, I saw you wanted to interject as well. So Tyler, you can come on in.
yeah, more like Soma is bad for business. Am I right?
Go ahead, Tyler.
Tyler?
Tyler, you there?
Earth to Tyler, are you there?
Maybe the microphone is microphone on.
Your microphone might be off. You hear us?
Let's see.
Oh wait,
Oh,
it's
he
off.
muted.
It's coming back.
Coming back.
Still can't hear you, Tyler.
God. Yeah. Like,
Tyler, put the Soma down and fix the microphone.
oh yeah. By the way, like, I want to respond quickly to George. Like, I saw like you posted like an ad. I'm not gonna play it because I'm recording, and like I'm just imagining like the audio just fucking plays out of nowhere, like in the audio recording. I'm just like, fuck, I don't want to do it.
I have seen that ad before. I know exactly what that ad is, and it's shocking. And this is the thing. Like when I read Brave New World, this was my third read of it. For the first time, this actually felt like a horror novel reading it this time, because I was thinking, God, this is just becoming more prescient, and the stuff that
Yeah.
seemed like satire now is just you can't call it satire when it just is.
Yeah. Tyler, can you hear us now?
Oh, I heard a click.
I heard it.
Oh,
Sorry.
Tyler, hey. Oh, there we go.
No, don't worry, go on.
Oh, you can hear me now? Okay.
There we go.
Okay, cool. So yeah, this was my first time reading the book. The education in my state that I live in is not very good, so I did not even read this in high school, and I didn't read like a ton of whatever, but I knew this was a classic like 20th century book that probably should have read in high school, but we just didn't for whatever reason. But so I was very stoked to read this, especially with everything I've been getting into recently, as far as my hot streak of reading a very anti-materialist and very anti-modern stuff recently, whether it's like political philosophy or just philosophy in general. But much like with Dostoevsky and Notes from the Underground, I can just the amount of like prophecy that Huxley predicted with everything that modernity eventually turned into in our current age has been like very, very eye-opening and very like on the money as far as him predicting a whole bunch of stuff happening. I guess my major concept, like major conceptual theme that I took away from reading this was really the struggle between the old world, as far as like kind of from John's perspective of like this savage old world that has so many foreign, like just like unspeakable concepts of like stuff like fatherhood and things like that seem so natural to us, like in this, even in our modern age, is still like very natural.
Yeah.
Even while those things are very much under attack right now. But the old world versus this brave new world, like a world without pain and suffering, one with like the emphasis on like the elimination of suffering, immediate gratification, conditioning of knowledge, and a lot of things focusing on the collective versus the individual, and like the overall deification of progress, like the narrative, the grand narrative of progress, society constantly moving forward, and just ideas much like that, and the ultimate declaration of independence from the transcendent and the divine, like the independence from God. Very much in the vein of like how humanists tend to, or how some humanists, I'm not going to say all, but some humanists would take that statement from Nietzsche saying that God is dead and we have killed him as a declaratory statement of victory from the old world and moving on into this new brave new world, this new frontier where modernity and progress and social stability and this kind of utopian idea has become like the chief end of everything that society and everything that we do, as far as what we are, what we aim to strive for and whatnot. Definitely a very scathing critique, in my opinion, of this kind of modernist liberalism, and partnering with kind of my own outside reading of anti-liberalist political philosophy and other forms of philosophy is like, I can definitely agree with, if liberalism is taken to its utmost extremes, that this is what we would end up with, and like kind of how horrifying one extremity is to another. But somebody did bring up a very good point with talking about John and his um, his struggle against kind of this old world and new world, and kind of the bad stuff that he does, just with um, resorting to violence and as a way of kind of like as a very negative outlet towards his inner conflict between wanting to um, live morally and outside of this current society, but also engaging in violence and committing evil acts um, as a result of his inner conflict and not having a having a good way of dealing with that inner conflict. Um, but yeah, that's just kind of my general thoughts. It's mainly just kind of like um, this this duality and this conflict between capital T tradition versus modernity and what a modernist hellscape ultimately looks like.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I 100% sympathize with that, and like, I guess I have like, yeah, you reminded me of like a big thing I wanted to talk about when it comes like, because Gordon mentioned something about the idea of parents as a dirty word, and like, yeah, that's something like that's a whole discussion I want to talk about. But I think Mohammed just joined, so I want to give him the spotlight for now. Yeah, like, if he wants to.
Hey,
Uh,
Mohammed.
Mohammed.
hey, I honestly didn't think I would be talking today, but I don't know, just hearing you guys. I guess part of me, yeah, I just had a thought. Like, I don't know if any of you have ever read Ayn Rand's Anthem, which is also a dystopian novel. A lot of people compare Brave New World to 1984, but I honestly would say Anthem is an interesting comparison too, because it only came out like 6 years after Brave New World. I- in but in Anthem, the society is pretty much similar to how it is in Brave New World. People are like assigned to roles at a very young age, conditioned to all this. And the idea of individualism itself has been removed. Like there's no pronouns for like individual pronouns that exist anymore. But I guess the main difference is that in Anthem, the society itself is visibly collapsing. Like they forgot how to create technology. They forgot how to recreate electricity. So there's clearly meant to be a downturn in society in that, which reflects Ayn Rand's own views that the idea that once you remove like individuality or individual thought, like society itself will collapse. But one thing, but one thing that's interesting is that even though in Anthem the society itself is a lot more what you could call bleaker or more depressing, like there's visibly people are much sadder, there's actually still kind of hope at the end of the novel because the idea is that because people are miserable, there's generally an internal sense of wanting society to be better. So there is a way that people could rise up and try to change society. But I'd say Brave New World is actually a lot more bleaker because even though
Yeah.
because the
Mm.
fact that the society they live in is the people they're incapable of thinking for themselves because they don't want to think for themselves. Like they have everything they need. The society itself is for most part functioning well. Like they have their basic needs done, so they don't need to think for themselves and I'll just have his pleasure. And because of this, the ending it's the ending itself is actually a lot sadder because you have yeah. Sorry, I'm just it's
No, don't worry. Don't
barely
worry.
had any sleep last night.
It's
But
fine. I was gonna say like a couple
yeah,
things.
yeah,
Like one quick thing
yeah,
is
yeah,
like
sure.
yeah, I was thinking a lot about the idea of parental figures in this book because like I think the parental figure, like the concept of it can go along with this idea of the death of God in the society, in that like the way like parents are seen, obviously like those like that raise us, that care for us, and like the ones that are like our guides through this new world. Like for the most part, the average person that is raised has parents or a parental figure as a guide to the world that we are inhabiting, that we are learning for the first time. So I find it interesting how it's like both religion and like the parental figure is seen as this transgressive thing. And I think why I find it why I find it so like unique when it comes like to John and like especially like that scene with Linda is that idea of like I think it shows in a world that I think this world has like, as much as it is like saying how like everything is in service of something else and everything like is like we can be all free and like there's equality. I think something about that sense of always making sure that we have this sense of not having to be guided by a procreational birth like system that we have with like a parental figure. I think it is quite selfish in a way that I feel like I think a lot of people do feel this way as well, especially the youth of this. We have this idea of these like every generation always has a sense of trying to like rebel against a parental figure. Like it's kind of like almost a normal thing of like it's a natural thing within a parental like of a family unit of a new generation would sometimes have a level of angst that they want to go against everything that the family is because either like especially if there is in a religious strict household because like I know there's like especially as well like not to get too personal but I know like I am in a religious family but my brother is actually an atheist and he's been an atheist for a few years and the reason why is because like I'm saying this a bit with a sense of irony but he does have quite a devout sense of loyalty to science. He loves science. He loves like he's very passionate about science and I feel he doesn't say it outright but I feel like this is the main reason as to why he eventually was like went against the spiritual side of belief like because I think he was someone that like was always like got a sense of rationality. He was always someone that tried to like he's very competitive. He's someone that always wants to like prove that he is right. Like he wants that definitive answer. And I think but another thing that makes it quite interesting when it comes to his character, like this like see, I'm analyzing my brother in a way I've never done before. Like even though he is very much someone that believes in science and irrationality, he is someone that also loves video games. He reads manga. He loves anime, and there is this thing about how he also has this obsessive need to always like go and like read every manga, watch every anime, and be very competitive in games. And it's a very irrational thought because sometimes he would be someone that would be too into these types of stimuli that would distract him from the from the rationality of science because like he's in the university and like at first he wanted to have a degree in physics. He wanted to be a physicist. He was fully going to be the next Einstein for sure. And and it's like but eventually like he had these tendencies of getting distracted of these like very like it's good to have like I really am influenced by his work. What do you mean his the way like his hard work of like always being someone that was very passionate about what he had and like he inspired me to get into anime and manga myself but he was someone that can easily get distracted by that and had a sense of laziness to him and thus like like I don't want to get too personal but it has come to bite him in the ass recently and like as much as I like teasing him but I know like there's like I know like I can't do that all the time because like I can easily get into that as well and so that I think about my bro I did think about my brother a lot when it comes to the scientific aspects of this world and of specifically science and distraction that comes with this world because that's how I see it in my brother and I feel like that type of experience that I had personally was like a big influence as to how I perceived people's thoughts and perspectives when it comes to how they live their lives.
Yeah. George, you've been patient. I can see you with your hand up. Go for it.
Okay. So Esteban, since you mentioned about this thing about the death of God, at the end of the book, what I my conclusion was that like by banning all the like classical works or like antiquity like Shakespeare, and ironically the only people who were like preserving the legacy of Western civilization were like the indigenous people, but that also makes a lot of sense and it's ironic at the same time. But the death of God comes from like just just stripping away all and any just angst and sense of angst of needing something beyond like your basic needs and pleasures out of the human. And that's why it, they even said that a society that only a society that has conflict that can produce someone like Shakespeare, only a society that has any type of conflict like, can produce any great art, any great artist. So, so by making things like too perfect, you you end up killing God, and that's really, really like like that scares me a lot, man. That scares me.
Yeah,
Fucking hell.
100%. And I think like the reason why like that's why I always think about like how the idea of like erasing the concept of parents is quite haunting, because I think it comes from a sense of arrogance. And like I think like it like admittedly like I do think like it is like a two-sided thing where we have angst to rebel against a very corporate system, but I think it is that angst when it's like done in a way where to an extreme that can cause these these systems of power, especially of those people that have that influence of power, that decide that they just they get so influenced by these horrible things, and that's their only reference when living in life. So if I imagine the people that created this world, that said we want to eradicate any semblance of a natural state of procreation, of course like it will come from a place of like arrogance and this sense of wanting to just get rid of stuff because you think that you are the smarter one. You think you are someone that can defy God himself. And that's why I always think
Well,
about
let me pose a question with this. I'm curious to hear what people think with this. So, what's interesting about the world in Brave New World is that by the end, like when we meet Mustafa Mond, he's very, very open about what his perspective is. And especially reading it now, post-COVID for the third time, I realize just how much someone like Mustafa Mond exists in real life. If we think we don't have to think very hard to think of the oligarchs or the technocrats that are very, very brazen about wanting things to be a very specific way, and they don't need to hide it. So I'm quite curious what people think. You can talk about it in the context of the novel or outside of it. This idea, because within Civilization of Brave New World, one of the first things that we see is their motto plastered on the building, and the main thing that's uttered between them all is this notion of stability. And what Mustafa Mond says by the end of it is when he's speaking to John in his office, essentially, if you follow his train of thought, the idea of keeping alphas, betas, deltas, gammas, and epsilons in their place, ultimately, it does bring a form of stability to society. And what John is asking for is that he's asking for disease, he's asking for cancer, he's asking for death, he's asking for all those things that Georges said. The conflict within society, the conflict within man is often where beauty emerges. But beauty is a result of the hardships of mankind. So I'm interested to hear, do people believe that stability within a society, should that be an ultimate virtue? Should that be something that that it is something of utmost importance? Or do we need some anarchy? And if we do need some stability, what are the parameters that any kind of body, whether it's a government body or a religious body, what say do they have? Where are the limits of that?
I'll try and answer that in the context like
Wait, go on, Edward. Go on, Edward.
I think that's huge. I would absolutely say that chaos is a necessary part of creation and life as it exists. In excess, it becomes destructive. It becomes death. How much should a society or a government, a ruling class intervene? That's a huge question. I don't think I can even begin to try to answer that even slightly coherently. But in
I
regards
yeah.
to you talking about the removing of the mother and father aspect in the book, it isn't just removing the procreation. It's another way of removing God, because there is no begotten, there is no begetter, there is no creator. You're manufactured, and science is the ultimate God, if you will, the ultimate procurer of life and that chaos, so on and so forth. And you talked about in one of the acid episodes about how they asked one of the open source or open AI guys, like, does God exist? And he said, not yet.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's like to them, these people with their ultimate knowledge become the controllers, the begetters of God, of control, of some kind of semblance of a safe, stable society. They know better. They themselves are already some kind of oh God, the word is escaping me. Arbiters of that stability. They themselves, I think, in arrogance, believe that they are some sort of God.
Yeah.
And they only need to bring about some kind of materialist form of that. And in a tangential way, it almost sounds like the demiurge to me. Like this demiurgic kind of urge is wanting to be materially brought to life by these people, and they are more than happy to bring that about. That is a little out there, but that's my thought on that. That is no way any kind of answer, but that
Like yeah.
yeah.
I think I can try and answer it. I think I can try to answer it.
Yeah.
I'll try to answer it from both perspectives, both from in the context of the world of the book and beyond. So I think in general, when it comes to stability, I think as I thought about it as I was reading the book for a second time, I think this is quite a subjective perspective when it comes to stability, because like when the context of the world in the book is very specific. The idea of a caste system, the idea of specific pleasures that you can have. I imagine like there's a huge bigger world that we don't see of other pleasures that are going around in this space. But the world of the book is quite specific in what it wants the people to feel, and what everyone wants to have because they're conditioned to it. And that to me, I think the reason why a world like that can be made is from a subjective perspective of the people that made this world, that created this world through science, because they have in their own specific subconscious mind very specific desires that, in as perverse way as they themselves see themselves as the new deities, as these overlords, that like anyone that creates this type of society where everyone is able to do whatever they want, but quote unquote do whatever they want, but in these specific manners of what they have, I think it still is a subjective sense where they are like, it is a malicious forcing upon of what you're supposed to do, because this is what's shown to be quote unquote stable. This is what quote unquote makes people happy. And ultimately, when it comes to any system, no matter who you are, if any one of us was to have complete power, we would be making our own subjective statements as to, especially if we were corrupted. Like let's say like we're all like have our own personal ideas. We stick to them, but we're corrupted with all this power in the world to change the world in our vision. It will still be a very subjective look at stability, because like we'll still have all these specific things that we want to have in our worlds, and we get to create it how we see fit. But the thing about humanity, obviously, is that every one of us, no matter how much you try and make everyone the same, we all have our differences. And every single time, the differences and the idiosyncrasies that are in our world come to bear. And it's like no much of dopamine or soma can ever change that, I think. And I think that's like the message of the book. I think like there is a possibility that at some point we will see that like this idea of stability will crumble. It will just take a very long time, and it will, like, no matter how much it can be hidden, I feel like underneath, very buried deep, it will show up. And I feel like that's something that I see a lot in our society of how no matter how much you try and like keep it in a very stable position, there's always going to be those that rebel against that. Like even in a very orthodox system, like when you have orthodox people, like there are people that have religious beliefs that do question, and they're the ones that
Well, here's what I think about that. Here's what I think about that, about this idea of dissent and whatnot, because we do see Brave New World as something that is very, very reflexive of our own society, and all of us here. I let's say if we were in the hierarchy, we would slot in. I'm not sure where we might fit. Maybe we're betas, might be a couple of deltas in here as well, maybe one or two alphas. But the thing is that the reason that that thing persists is because everyone ultimately still accepts what they're given. And Esteban, as you said there is this notion that it's unsustainable. There are going to be these people that are innately going to reject it. My frustration with reading the novel is because I had to read a couple of chapters at a time and then put the book down constantly because I was just getting frustrated, not with the characters that were necessarily in the book, but because how easy it is to take someone from real life, place them in the book, and nothing changes. It doesn't feel any difference to how it appears in reality. And this idea that all we need is to just keep resisting, I would argue that the reason, perhaps maybe even the main reason why the book is so relevant is because this idea that we speak about of all we need are people to resist. How many people do you know in your real life that do resist against the system? That in the conversations that we have on here, or whether it's on the chat room or whatnot, that you'd be able to speak to them about art, that you'd be able to speak to them about alternative ways of living, even on here in between us, that we've been able to approach one another with different ideas, whether it's about meditation or drug use or our way of living. I think you could argue that we are all together fighting for some manner of an alternative lifestyle, but we're all willing to hear one another. How likely do you think it is that you could take these ideas, put them out there in the zeitgeist, and the 80% of people, which is what Jay earlier said, essentially 80% of people are like the deltas and the epsilons in the novel, that they just go along with it? I think that the hardship of Brave New World is that you show this stuff to people, you can give them the facts like John does, he can hand them Shakespeare, and exactly like Brian's just put there, no one rebels in a meaningful way. There is no kind of dissent and there's no space for it. And even in the novel, it's like the voice of Huxley is just this voice that's out there that says, oh, yeah, of course this is the way things are. And as though the natural default is what everyone's striving towards. I don't necessarily believe in accelerationism. I do believe in resisting constantly.
I guess.
But there is just this idea that I don't know. I don't find it a pessimistic novel. I definitely don't find it an optimistic novel. But I think the act of rebellion is ultimately a fool's errand, as we see from John. But you still have to keep doing it.
Yeah, I guess like I should have emphasized what I mean by that is that there's always this like in the society of Brave New World, they want to act like this is a perfect world where everyone is happy. If that was the case, then why are people questioning it? I feel like no matter what, like I don't think this world will fully change. But that's the point. That's why I think stability is a fallacy, because like that's why perfection is a fallacy. Is because like if it was perfect, then we wouldn't have anything that would resemble a conflict whatsoever. Which I feel like no matter where you go, there's always one person. I think there's always going to be one person that will show some sense of angst and conflict that will just be like somewhere in the corner. Like, and they can hide the corner all they want, but the corner will still be there. And I think like that's what I'm saying. Like I think the world of Brave New World, like I think they have created something that will live on for a very long time, but it's this idea of like we are the perfect world because everything that we show around us is perfect is not true, because they're not the entire world. they're not the absolute, because as we see, and I think there are people like, and that's why I think, especially in our reality, we can pretend all we want, but like it's like we can hold up a mirror and say yes. We can hold up a wall. No, like that's better. We can hold up a big giant epic wall and say, look at how powerful this is. But then you look in the back, and it's probably like a smidge. It's probably like something behind it that will always be sticking there, like no matter what. And that's how I feel about when it comes to this society of both Brave New World and our own. Is that the idea of perfection that many people try and persist on us can never be a reality, because like no matter what, like it's funny how they try and create a lot of they have they have their own embryo plants. Like I'm pretty sure like even if they create new children, one of their creations will probably be maybe a fault. I don't know. Like that can be a possibility.
Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah,
to
when I
just-
I
Oh,
just
yeah,
got
Bob.
Echo Winius in as well, so I just want to hear from it, and then we can move around.
Mhm.
Winius? Is he there?
Hello.
Hello.
So hi guys.
Hello.
I read
Hi,
it for the
Queenie.
first time, the book, and I wanted to pick up on the act of resistance and how this is some dimension in which all of the main characters are connected with each other, I think, to some degree. For Lenina, maybe in the lowest degree, she has some sort of voyeurism about it. Like she feels some attraction towards it. Like John is some sort of rock star. And there's something in the book where she once woke up while being what is it called? Conditioned. So maybe she became aware to some degree that there's a different perspective to have, or that she is conditioned, that there's maybe some other state that is possible. And then there is Bernard, who's like this almost like a poser who just does this for to get or use these values to get a moral high ground, but still plays by the rules of the game. And and then we have John, that it's so much on the other side, on in the extreme of this dimension, on being like totally alternative, that he can't integrate at all, and at the end kind of gets killed by being stripped of his individuality in this cult-like orgy thing that goes on.
It's see, it's a tough one, because I also wanted to pose the question to people that, because there is the idea of the current default is Brave New World, and ultimately we could look at it as Huxley bringing a pamphlet to us and saying, if we continue in this path, then we are going to end up here, and so we need to counteract that, and we need more dissidents like John. So all I could think of, if we were John, what is the likeliest thing to do in the Brave New World? How do you counteract it? How can you destroy it, if it's even possible?
Yeah, that was my next question to anyone, but to you, Lewis. Like, what is meaningful rebellion? If everything that we see societally is through, a mainstream or controlled lens, anything that could be meaningful that is occurring right now could be completely cut off, silenced, shut down, or propagandized to be some kind of evil or perversion in our society. How do we then have some kind of meaningful rebellion? I face that every day all my life. What is actually meaningful? Opposed to something that's personal, like a personal work within me that is in a way a silent rebellion. It can be reflected in some ways, but if no one's paying attention, none of your family or friends or coworkers are paying attention, or they find you distasteful, what does that mean for them? It might move somebody. They might be interested, but in a lot of cases, they're not. They would be called what did Louise call you, Lewis? Like disagreeable. I've had that crap a lot of my life, not even meaning to be, but come across as disagreeable or opinionated.
Yeah.
So
I think there's some optimism to be had. Can I say this? Do you want to go?
Yeah, of course.
Health service?
No, of course.
Okay, yeah. So the way I see it is that every major media evolution in human history, the same rhetoric pops up in terms of like, oh, we're never going to recover from this. Oh, it's changed society in innumerable ways, and we've adapted to almost all of them, except like the more recent ones, and it is getting faster. But I think like rebellion, um, I believe in rebellion. I 100% believe in rebellion. From the moment I first went on the server, like I believe it's just like you don't get to see it that often because
Yeah.
people are very hard to communicate with. And you don't see minds being changed, but I think that's just an extra push on people who do want to rebel against the system, people who do to really like learn the ways, to take it back to basics, take it to the rules of the game, and uh find the weak links in the armor that way. Just like I believe in communication in rhetoric. Like good rhetoric. Like the guy I really admire on YouTube right now, Dr. K. There are millions of psychology YouTube channels on YouTube. A lot of them garbage, but that's not what I want to talk about. Like what he does, like psychology and mental health stuff. But as a communicator, he's so good at like reaching a broad amount of audiences, and you see this when he like brings on people to stream, right? Where like he's literally brought on like red pillars, incels, these people who are like he's brought on like a boomer Trump supporter, who's like never gonna be convinced on therapy ever, right? And it's like through in it's just you those are the rules you really have to know if you're really going to communicate to someone. And I mention it because I think that's where you have to put your energy. Um the the like in Hinduism there's your dharma, right? Or your purpose. Wait, am I saying the right one? Dharma. Yeah, it's like you have like a dharma, right? Which is basically there's something that reality selects you for. Or I don't think it's a reality. It's like basically you have lingering thoughts, right? There's always something that you comes to your mind, and your mind is always going to linger on those thoughts and say, "I need to commit to this," and that is ultimately the determinant of your fate. You know what I'm saying? That's what you have to bring up, and I think like for a lot of us it really is like putting the energy back into the world so that
Yeah.
we can so that things can change better, so that people can live like they can live with happy and free minds. So I think like it really is you just have to let life bring you onto the like learn how to talk to people better, learn how to because that's what I'm saying is like I think especially a lot of my friends, I look to some of my like friends from high school who are very anti-materialist, and they some of them were on the fucking like some of them were like what do you call the anarcho-primitivists level type shit. They were on some like some genuinely like industrial society is so they these are the kind of people who they want to have a really aggressive conversation with you about like social media is making you more narcissistic. Social media is making you not even or all of society and whatever. A lot of the stuff we're talking about. But the thing I wish I could tell to those guys if they were here right now is like that's not what the revolution looks like. The revolution looks like you you offer to hang out with someone, you become their friend, you you know what I'm saying? You let's say you're just going to the gym with someone and you're doing that, and over a while you kind of get to know them, find out what they're about. And that's when you can start moving on to conversations about like, oh, well, you know, maybe the things you're pursuing are what ultimately are keeping you back. Maybe the maybe what you really need to be doing is like putting your energy into yourself, learning how to manipulate the energy within yourself. And when you can teach them that, that's when you can like have a conversation about like, oh, let's put the energy back in the world. And I think that's the order it has to be. You have to be able to like put the energy into yourself and support yourself before you do that to other people, because otherwise it's just you're gonna mess up. Like I still believe in my young life. I just at least have to acquiesce the skills to support myself, which in essence could be looked at as like giving back into the system. But it's just not my responsibility, and that's always going to be on my mind. It's always going to be blocking me. So,
Yeah.
but I admire like what you guys are doing, right? Which is like you're doing this business, you're doing this channel, which very much you love, and you could be, doing things, gaming the system. You could be doing whatever the fuck, making shorts or whatever, just for the extra buck. But you're making something you're passionate about, right? So I definitely think there really is an order to things, and there really is a harmony, a magic you got to learn. If it means convincing people, if it means, you know what I'm saying? Like, I swear to God, everyone here has to look at that fucking Dr. K conversation with Sneeko. And, like, this is, like, such a clear bully. Like, this is such a clear fucking bully in that he has the mindset that, unfortunately, I fucking have, which is, like, you have to, like, be mean, or you have to say something controversial. You have to see people grimace to feel seen. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And this is a fucker,
Yeah.
and Dr. K is like, he is not of Sneeko's ilk. He is not like talking like him. He's not thinking like him. He's not saying anything like him. But he just has this conversation where, like, in literally like 15 minutes, he like Sneeko realizes how much he's on his side. Like, I swear to God, you guys have to fucking see that conversation. It's magic. It's magic. But that's all I have to say. Thank you. Oh, and I
Well,
was gonna
like,
wait. Yeah, go, okay, good.
I'm gonna go and finish. It's okay.
Okay, I was gonna say there's a saying that I think really applies to social media, and I think really applies to uh Brave New World, which is calories without nutrients. You know what I'm saying? It's like people
Yeah.
are pursuing their desires, but they're not being sated. They want sexuality, but what they need is like self acceptance. They have these jobs and shit, but they need like agency and individual mobility. You know what I'm saying? They need like they need individuality and to be able to assert themselves. That's it. And I could talk about this later. I'm gonna let you guys go, but holy shit, the casual narcissism that every fucking character in this book expresses, all the fucking people from the Brave New World, is so relatable. Like, I don't understand how he literally predicted how shitty and bitchy Zoomers are, but just like the fucking the mother of Tom, the mother of the savage, right? The one who gets like taken into, when she's bitching. I swear to God, you have to understand, this entire fucking generation has literally become a matter of like, dude, life is so good on social media, so I feel shit in comparison, and I have to fucking like bitch about it constantly. Literally, it's like it's encapsulated in the experience I've had a million times, which is like, hey man, and I've had this as a kid where it's like, hey man, I fucking got put in a dog cage by my dad today, and they're like, yeah, dude, my trauma is so much worse. Like, immediately having this conversation. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm very mad, but thank you.
Yeah, but I
No,
think
no,
it kind of
No,
brings
but
it.
I've done that too.
I
I've
can
done that too. That's the thing. I've done
Yeah,
that too.
that's
So,
great. It's first of all, it's great how passionate you are. Like that just shows how much, like, piece of art can connect with us on a deeper level. But also, I want to say, like, yeah, it brings it back to what I was thinking of when it comes to the idea of youth, as I think like that's something that Brave New World touches on a lot, is this idea of youth and the idea of like that whole thing of like youth is fleeting but immaturity is forever. And I think no piece of fiction emblemizes that more than Brave New World, in that I think the idea of immaturity is not something that can just be erased once you grow older. Like, the idea of maturity comes in actually how you live in your experience. So of course, like, people that are fully arrogant to the idea of like actually like the sense of like you kind of need a bit of that a bit of like, I hate, like, I know like the extreme left will hate me to say this, but like you kind of need a bit of that conservative mindset a little bit to understand like some of the aspects of how to live a life. And like I feel this sense of strong arrogance like always perpetuates throughout every era of society. The only difference is that it becomes more, and it just balloons to a higher level, and like I don't think it will deflate anytime soon.
I wanted to
Yeah.
respond to Edward and Leo as well with that, about that idea of rebellion, because I think that bringing it back to the novel, which everyone in the text chat is basically saying that we've stopped speaking about. What I think about this act of rebellion is like, how do we do it? I think that in the novel, I think John is the only person that shows any kind of legitimate rebellion. And for 99% of the novel that he's in, he remains steadfast in his belief, and he remains the moral compass and the image of rebellion that we would want until the finale, when he goes against something, when he, whether he kills Lenina, whether that woman is Lenina, but he commits an act at the end that he finds is so abhorrent that he ends up killing himself. And I'm glad that Leo also pointed out this idea of, I'm glad that you noticed that, we could be making shorts and doing all this shit, because the reason that John, he falters within his own morality, within his own moral code, is because he commits an act that he finds so abhorrent that he kills himself. And that's what rebellion is that even when everyone is surrounding you, when there is no one to listen to, as Edward said, you can't speak to your parents, you can't speak to your friends, no one around you gets it. And like Leo said about what we do here, we could be making shorts, we could be milking the system, we could be talking about fucking whatever film is out or anything like that that's a bit more topical at the moment. It's just this constant act of resistance that you have to do. And it does come from a personal thing. It is just something that comes from within. And John does that throughout most of the novel. The one aspect that I think may be a fatalistic view that Huxley puts in the novel that I don't share, and maybe it's a critique of John, is that in order to resist against the world, he decides to return back and completely inhabit all of the things that the savage reservation taught him. So essentially what he did was he went from one extreme of human behavior, and in order to reject it, he returned to the alternative, which is like the idea of, you see people, I don't like liberalism, so what I'll do is I'll become a far right extremist, and vice versa. And the one thing that Huxley did say, if he were to rewrite the novel, is that he would have given a third option. And I think that that's the actual act of resistance that John is supposed to do if he wants to navigate the world, which is he needs to keep resisting the Brave New World, take what comes from his from the Savage Reservation, but then continue on this own individual path that he crafts. And it's something that I've mentioned in the in Acid recently. I don't know if it's a value system of mine or something that I'm living by, but I am just telling myself, the one thing that I do live by is this aggressive individuality, of this constant imposition of your beliefs that are true. And with me, that requires sincerity that I always speak about. It requires honesty, and it does require a bit of disagreement, a disagreeableness, where the moment that you do see this collective nature just being mindlessly accepted, just like where these weird things are placidly inserted in society, like Esteban says, you see your relatives watching an advert that looks like AI and it's just slop constantly being fed, then you just have to resist it. And even if no one wants to listen, and even if things feel hard, the alternative is what happens to John, in which he does give in for that brief moment, and then his goalposts are moved again, and he cannot live with himself because he's normalized a behavior he wouldn't allow himself to normally normalize, and now he has to live the rest of his life like that. I've gone on far too long. Please, someone come in and speak
Okay.
about whatever you like.
Like, yeah, actually, like if you don't mind, like I think I want to almost
What?
change the subject entirely to a different chapter in the book because I've been wanting to
Wait,
ask.
hold on, Esteban. Hold on, Esteban. Just wait 1 second, because I think Brian actually was going to say something to it as well, because I just saw you
Yeah,
muted his
I wanted to
mic.
talk about the last chapter for a second.
Yeah.
And I thought
Yeah, me too.
symbolically it was interesting that he went to a lighthouse and a rundown lighthouse, that is. And you know what are lighthouse used for? To ward off danger, like don't come here and stuff like that. I almost saw it as like he was like trying to shine a light and get people to notice him, and then when the media came, they like bastardized it and stuff like that. I think I misread the ending. I didn't realize that he had killed what's his name, Linnea.
He may not have. It's just it's a theory, because I think there is a bit of interpretation to what exactly happened at the end.
I thought he just had a mass orgy with everyone, and
Yeah. That definitely could be it as well. Yeah, that could be it as
and
well.
it was just like a realization that he had succumbed to the brave new world and become as degenerate as them and stuff like that, and the horror of that is why he killed himself. That's what I took it as. And when everyone started coming and like, what's it called? Was it like the paparazzi? Everyone was like filming him and taking photos and all these things, and kind of reminded me of the Elephant Man. I guess just the otherness of it a little bit, and like this freak or whatever. So I took it as he was trying to, like, he got into the lighthouse and is like the dangers of the brave new world, like maybe trying to rile people to come there subconsciously. I don't know. It's all like just the imagery of it is what I'm getting at, but like that's what I took it as.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk. I wanted to briefly talk about the ending too, in regards to like what we were talking about rebellion. Is that all this crowd of people come and they're fascinated. They have this perverse fascination with his resistance to the world, and I think we do see that in our modern society. Someone in the comments about like how Disney and Amazon put like anti-capitalist messages in their streaming shows. But I find it I find it interesting how we do sort of do that. It kind of reminds me of a film that came out like last year called Evil Does Not Exist, which is sort of about how like people have this weird fascination with nature, but like they don't understand it and they're upended by it. And the ending too is kind of I do feel like there's a little bit of ambiguity, because for the while it always kind of interested me why he ended on those peculiar words of just the directions that John was facing as he was hanging there. And I think it kind of symbolizes the influence he has on the world. And I think Huxley leaves it up to interpretation whether that influence is a positive one or whether it's going to be compromised in some way.
Yeah,
I like that actually. I think Louis, Mo, you had a unique take on the idea of the compass at the end, didn't you?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys were able to listen to all the way to the end, but I think honestly, like the end, I see it very in a symbolic way. Not just the suicide, obviously, that I think that he's alluding to, but the idea of almost like he's using that far east, far west, like the idea of the body moving almost in a mechanical way, like a clock would.
yeah.
So it feels like he's talking about what I annotated was the idea of the cycle of time, and almost like the inevitability that even John, which chooses to go to the space, which is the lighthouse, that in classical poetry, in classical painting, and even in mysticism, the lighthouse is a space of hope. Like is a building that withstands all sorts of waves, that withstands all sorts of weather. So it's almost like a retreat into the self. And even so, in that space, he cannot escape the modern world, like the world stage
Mechanized.
and the mechanized, to the point that his body, in the end, dangles like a clock would. That's kind of like how I took it personally. Even the idea of a compass as well.
Yeah.
But this is also because I tend to look at things very symbolically. But the reason I'm saying this is because I think Huxley also had a vein of mysticism in himself, like that towards the end of his career. I think when you see The Island, you really see that in full fledged. And I have a thing that, in a way, I think when he's using John to also talk about his own struggles. Maybe with his family, maybe with his own. I mean, living in between worlds. I think in a way, John is a bit of Huxley himself. And I think when you look at the island, in his vision for an utopian future, I think you can see like that fully realized, like can come full circle. I don't know, maybe I'm just inferring really. Those are thoughts that I annotated that came to my mind. In some way, it's inescapable to talk about yourself when you're writing, I guess, in a way. And I think, especially with the love of Shakespeare and classical literature, I think I saw that in John, like a little bit of Huxley, but almost like, you know how Paul Schrader wrote Taxi Driver to kind of purge that side of him. That he felt he was becoming that person. I feel like in a way Huxley is not just talking about the society that was forming in front of him, but maybe something within himself. Because he was part of a family, he could easily become like someone that is pro eugenics, someone that is really into this complete materialistic world, which there is a stance because they are scientists. So in a way, they are in an elevated intellectual plane of existence too, right? Well, I don't know. Those are just thoughts. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I remember earlier Lewis said something about a moral compass, which obviously, kind of reincorporated with that ending. And I don't know if that's quite what he was going for, but I do think, like, what we mentioned earlier, that, like, John was trying to go to the complete opposite extreme. And, people are much more complex than that. Like, the ending shows that, like, every human has these hedonistic desires. We all have these desires to submit. Like, I'm not gonna lie, there's parts of the society that do sound kind of intriguing. Like, it's horrifying, and I think that's also kind of what makes it horrifying as well. But, we all have to discipline ourselves, and it's okay to mess up every once in a while. We don't have to, kill ourselves because of it, but yeah, it's I guess that's all I had to say. But yeah,
I mean,
I find that interesting.
Go ahead.
No, sorry, you can go on, Edward. It's okay. I'll say after.
I was just thinking about like talking about indulgences. You're Catholic, Luiza. Like I'm ignorant to like the indulgences that are permitted, and like what, if any, necessity that is. So avoiding like different extremes, allowing yourself to enjoy different pleasures that may be considered hedonistic and not like ultra spiritual or to the opposite, ultra hedonistic, but they still are these pleasures. Is that permissible in any society? Are we? Is that obviously that can be a very individualistic responsibility on how far you indulge into that, or should there be none at all? And what does that entail entirely with indulgences? Like, and again, that's probably very personal to each person's religious beliefs as well.
Yeah, I think it's also true that
it,
like he literally can't escape this world. Like this crowd following him, like it symbolizes that he can't escape it, and he thinks like ending his life is the only way out.
Yeah, they call him Mr. Savage. So I think by adding the Mr. to the name, like to the way, not only they call him a stereotype, but they add the Mr. The Mr. I see it as a way of like trying to domesticize him, trying to civilize him.
Yeah.
But in a way, they
create an image.
Yeah, exactly. Fitting him into that world. That's the only way that they can even fathom. It's like that one, he's a stereotype. He's the savage. He's this thing that we can package and sell it as a feelie, right? Because in the end, he's like self-flagellating, and the reporters still make a video out of it. Like, I mean, it's absurd because we can see so much parallel between our world. Even the way people see, like, say, for example, Amazonian tribes, like, where I think George can speak to that as well. Like, even in Brazil, like, people see indigenous people as this commodity, like, either to further their political ideology or to, like, live vicariously throughout, like, oh, wow, they're so pure. They live a certain interesting lifestyle, And I think George will probably agree with me with that. Go on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. The left basically fetishizes indigenous people as to, what's the word? Like, rebrand like the idea of the noble savage like as something like good, but Like most like indigenous people just need like the basic stuff that every other Brazilian needs, like food, housing, running water. But none of us leftists care about any of this shit. And like 14% of indigenous land being sold right now, like this past couple of weeks, has been sold to like some shady like quote unquote environmentalist company. Like I don't know what the fuck is going on there.
Oh,
It's the same with like the people in power, isn't it? In Brave New World, where it's a case of, oh, we're doing all this. The reason that like Mustafa Mon can keep all things is because he's not involved within this. It's like, you know how I find it very silly, this idea that occurs nowadays of, it's like you have white people and then POCs. And like that reminds me of Mustafa Mond, of this idea that white people, you know, we're separate from race. Like we're not in that. That's something for all of you to deal with. I'll just stand over here. And for me, it's the same kind of like when Leo mentioned narcissism. When Leo mentioned narcissism, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, all of you alphas and all of you epsilons, you go over there and I'll sort it all out for you. And it's the same thing that we see of like fucking the people in charge at Disney, where it's like, oh, you know what? Everyone's bothered at the moment about anti-capitalist sentiments, so we're not involved in that. We'll just let all of you deal with that. We're removed from it, and it's just. It's a bit like Doublethink in 1984, but with this smiling veneer over it.
Yeah.
The whole happiness of the world state is something that freaks me out the most. Like here in the UK, I don't know who else is from the UK, like, or is living here, but during the COVID lockdown, people will go to every day at a certain time. People will go to the window and clap for the NHS. And I remember saying, like, you know, I get it, like, you know, they're struggling, like there's a lot of things going on. And I remember thinking it was quite bizarre that clockwork every time people. It was really weird to see people in the window just clapping, like, hey, like we're gonna survive this, everyone. And it was just weird. There's a sense of solidarity which I admire, but there's also this like robotic thing. This is what we should do. This is the right response to the COVID-19. You know what I mean? It's like very robotic, and if you don't do it, you're like social outcast. But just in response to what Edward asked me earlier about being a Catholic and like self-indulgent activities, I think personally, something you said right in the beginning, Edward, actually struck a chord with me, which is the idea that I also thought that when John retrieves to the lighthouse, in a certain way, he's also mimicking his own weird conditioning, because even the way he uses Shakespeare throughout the book, he's still just repeating the lines. He still hasn't really figured it out what Shakespeare really means to him. So he's repeating those lines, like he's self-flagellating because he's repeating also what he learned from the savages. So the way I approach anything, even though I'm not trying to provoke any schism in the Catholic Church, but what I do approach is I tend to take the sins very seriously, but at the same time, they are sins for a reason. But we are infallible, that they are gonna happen in our lives. But I think it's better to be aware that you are a sinner. But this is just a personal thing. Yeah, this is my vision. I'm not imposing that on anyone. But I think it's better to be aware that you are flawed, that you are a sinner, and then try to strive towards the ideal, which for me is Jesus, the ideal man, person, God, all in one, than to not be aware of something higher than yourself. So even though I know that we tend towards, as humans, we tend towards sin, and it's very unfortunate, but it's the hand we dealt with, and this is a path to me looking upwards, looking at something that transcends humanity, beyond humanity, makes me feel and act more virtuous in my daily life. But at the same time, like Tyler was writing, I also feel like this fascination with something morbid. But I think it's part of it. Like, I think you have to accept yourself as human, is what George said. Like, the struggle, like being pushed to both sides, is part of the process. But ultimately, if you didn't feel any temptation, how can you even know that you're a good person, because the process of temptation is you get tempted by something and then you choose to still do the right thing, right? You choose to be good.
John does that in the novel.
Yeah, John does that in the novel when he almost rapes Lenina and he chooses not to. Like, it's not that you don't feel anything bad, it's that you choose to act in a good way despite everything that you feel. And I think being a Catholic helps me with that. And I think people will find that through other religions, other thought processes, other philosophies. I think it not necessarily just from that, but just to answer your question, because I do think it's a personal path.
Yeah.
Like, but even in the book, when I hear Huxley talk about the idea of God, I wasn't necessarily, even though they speak about Jesus, I didn't necessarily thought about the Catholic God. I thought of more this archetype of ancient, like,
it's the divine, isn't
yeah,
it?
the divine in general, right? Like something beyond us, like a guiding light, like even in that, like the lighthouse, something that is guiding the boats. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's 100% how I saw it. It's like,
Yeah.
and I feel like it fits well with the novel because, like, in the context of the mindset of people in this world, the idea of the Old and New Testament is a symbol, but in a symbol that doesn't mean anything that can impact humanity. Just a symbol that is there to be prepackaged, just like anything else.
Yeah. I also wanted to bring up this idea just like in relation to sin, because I've mentioned on the podcast recently was that I know what I think in terms of religious thought. I know what I believe. I'm just not equipped at the moment to physically explain it. Maybe one day I will be, but I just don't have the words at the moment. I'm sure eventually I'll be able to espouse on it more, but I do know what I believe, and I think that in Brave New World, when Leo was speaking earlier, something about what you said struck a chord. Was this idea that you'd said, like your openness to certain things, like you realize, oh, I was completely wrong with them, and I found that really, really interesting, this perspective, and I think it's a very brave thing to say also, because just before this, I was taking a bit of time. We had nothing to do today, so we were just waiting around. And as I was tidying up, I decided, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to pop on YouTube and see what's going on. And apparently there was this drama because, Leo, when you mentioned the psychologist, it just reminded me of, when you mentioned Sneeko, sorry, it just reminded me of these people that are on the internet. And I saw like there was this big cancellation of Destiny that happened earlier, and I said, "Oh, this is interesting." So I got up to date with what was going on, and I saw a clip, and it was just complete providence that I saw this clip like 2 hours before we were having this conversation, and it was Destiny sat in his setup, and it's a conversation about hedonism. And he says that he has a completely healthy relationship. And then he's pressed on, well, do you not think that you have any advices or whatnot? And he says, no, of course not. He says, I know exactly what I want. I know the payoffs that come with the things that I do. He says, I like to fuck a lot of people. I like being around mentally ill people. I like doing drugs. And he says all this, and I was like, wow, this is so interesting to see just before the conversation on Brave New World. And then to hear Leo say that, because this notion that, yes, of course, we are all drawn to vice, but there has to be some limitation to personal pleasure, to personal hedonism, because it's such a cliche to say, but there is this notion of a slippery slope that does occur, in which if the parameter of what is goodness in your life is happiness, then it seems to inevitably remove your humanism. There is something about being happy, there is something about being fulfilled all the time, which isn't a human trait. And in relation to the conversation about sin and whatnot, I think that, what Brave New World does is it really, it gets in your gut a bit, and it holds up a mirror and says, look, you can accept drug use, you can accept sleeping around, consensual sex all the time, you can accept happiness, You can even like even bringing it to our world. You can accept a new technology. You can get a new phone. You can buy a new build house that has all the amenities. Go get yourself an electric car. All these things, and then you realize I will never be satiated because within the Brave New World they have everything, but they still require Soma. They still need to escape. If there is any kind of convenience, even if we have everything already, if we are completely fulfilled, we still want more. And what Brave New World does is it shows us all these things, and even in the smallest pleasure, it is still a vice, or if you are religious, it is still sin. And ultimately, it is a lifestyle that says, do you know what? Any kind of engagement in that, you have to call it what it is, even if it doesn't do that much damage to you. It is still a sin that you are enacting in, and the ideal, the perfect thing to do is never do it, which is impossible, and that's the struggle. But again, I'm speaking too much. By all means, please, someone cut me off.
I think it was good.
When I remember when I first read the novel like a few years ago, what stuck out to me most was the main theme of a utopia is not possible. And obviously the book is a lot more complicated than that, but that's what I got out of it the first time. Like you have characters like Bernard or Helmholtz or John, who's literally like an alien to this world. But even at the beginning, there's a line that I think is really funny where the director is talking about an alpha embryo, and he's like, oh, it could grow up and become and he's about to say world controller, but then he changes his mind and goes director of the facility, which is hilarious, and it immediately shows that like he's not completely satisfied. So like even the people who aren't complete weirdos like Bernard, there is this level of dissatisfaction within them that they haven't reached. They are still trying to find that something else that makes you human.
And I think happiness is a wrong thing to optimize or like pursue for. I don't think it's like really human, the happiness thing, because it's so fleeting. It's there abstractly in the moment, in the dopamines that we get. So if you optimize for happiness, you're not living a life. You're going for completely wrong things. It's like the values that I would say wrong because I don't have a better word for it, but I don't want to tell other people what to do. But I think that's.
It's like I wouldn't even call it happiness. I would call it pleasure. It's like this is a world of pleasure because, like, in my opinion, happiness is something that is a strong feeling that you never forget. Any moment where you are genuinely happy, you want to think about forever. You want to like always bring it up to people. That's why I always bring up great moments in my life that make me truly happy, and those are always when I'm with my family, with my friends, when like I watch and engage with great art. And like, this sounds so cheesy to say, you guys are part of that collection. I mean it, because like when I have these conversations with you, it's a joy. Like this right here is a joy. This makes me feel happy.
Yeah.
And I feel so. I feel so like it's a catharsis.
Understood.
What?
I was just saying understood.
It's seriously, yeah. Thanks, guys, like for making this genuinely like making me feel very happy, like of being friends and having these great conversations. But like that's the thing, really. This I find this sincere. I find this genuine. Because I always will remember this. I always will think positively on this in a strong way. And pleasure is not that. Pleasure is quite limiting. It's quite a short-lived experience where it is like an Adderall high where you have that moment but you don't forget about it. It's like I can have fun with a fucking, let's call it for what it is, like a brain rot blockbuster movie, and say, I can have fun with something so stupid, but I'm not gonna be thinking about it forever. Like it will be gone in like a couple hours, and that's usually what goes with anything, really. And I think that's the difference between happiness and pleasure.
Yeah.
Pleasure gives you a hangover.
I mean, like, depends on the pleasure. It depends on what your pursuit of pleasure is, because let's say making love with your partner is pleasurable. If that's the only thing I do with them, and that's the only thing I seek from them, it becomes a hedonistic, selfish endeavor. Obviously, my happiness with that person should rest upon my relationship and love for them, my respect for them, my enjoyment with them and me as well. The endless pursuit for that type of pleasure in other people with no meaningful, hello kitty cat, with no meaningful sorry cat, she just leapt on my lap, is ultimately the same as like seeking any kind of drug high or any other dopaminergic, pleasure seeking. It's ultimately fruitless, and you're constantly looking for something to outdo that, so on and so forth. If that made any sense.
Yeah, it's the way like the society kind of justifies their guilt too. Like I left in the comments another note about the director, how like he impregnated Linda, and then just left her there. But he probably just took some soma and was like, forget about it. It's just my happiness is all that matters,
Right.
And I think the fact of like making John from an indigenous person from America is not a coincidence, because that sort of references America's progress and how they wiped out the Native Americans off of their land and everything. So I feel like it's that price of it's not just the price of progress, but it's about that mentality that everyone in this world has, that they can do no wrong, or if they do wrong, they just forget about it. And it's an incredibly horrifying narcissistic attitude that they have.
Yeah.
I think this leads into a discussion I wanted to have on a certain moment in the book that's really stuck in my mind this time. Like, I want to know your guys' thoughts on the moment, the scene with Lilina and quote unquote the Indian, because that's a moment that I just want to hear your guys' thoughts about it.
Which one? Where she meets the first time that she goes into the reservation?
Yeah.
The guide, the guy that's that's guiding around.
Yeah, that one.
Her like abject disgust with this person.
Yeah, the abject disgust, and like, but like it's a strange thing where like I took it as like disgust, but like I think she's also kind of fascinated because of its strangeness. It's this weird two-faced type of side that I think again speaks a lot about this idea of, I think, people like this rejection of the abnormal, yet they're so fascinated by it. It's like much like how with sin, and like we are abject to sin, yet we're also like, it's a natural part of our humanity where we're fascinated by it.
I have something to say with that. Jay, you okay?
Yeah, I was like, you're making me nervous.
Oh, I forgot to mute myself. My bad.
Yeah, I actually have a bit about that. So, in regards to Lenina's reaction to it, I think you're spot on there, because there is this discussion. What I often forget, and I have to keep reminding myself when I'm reading the novel, is I try and really put myself in the position of the characters like Bernard and Lenina, because imagine their perspective when they actually go to the reservation. Imagine what they actually see.
Yeah.
They may as well be on the moon, because humanity to them is organized through alphas to epsilons, and that's why they call him a savage, because he's not that. He's not of their ilk. He's not a species, and they still treat them like this circus sideshow. I think what's interesting, and it relates earlier to what Leo was saying about sex as this thing of treating people like meat, is because when she comes back to civilization, there is still this, there's this conversation that goes on about John as well. Everyone's asking, oh, have you slept with him? Because he's this exotic thing. And within the Brave New World, what we see from birth is that games are this thing which is based around commodification, it's based around consumerism, is based around play, and vice versa. And we have this idea of, when Leah was talking about, being with someone, sleeping with someone, you do commodify that person, because in the novel they say, I've had them. And what I see with that is that, in a world that is completely based about consuming, about taking, they're seeing something which is brand new. Their obsession is everything that's old, history is bunk, but something that's new, I can have that. I don't even know if I want that, but I should, because it's new and I deserve to have it. And I think that's how they end up looking at John and the people in the Indian reservation. it's this abject disgust immediately. It's like, oh my God, what is that? That's awful. And then all of a sudden, they just think, but I don't have one. The degree of which consumerism is so embedded within the mind of everyone is on such it's just a mechanism that they do. If they can have it, even if it's an individual, something within them will just attract it because they commodify and turn everything into a product, something for them to have.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's kind of like brought out or fleshed out fully at the very end when they all circle around John. Like, he is something to have, to be amazed by, to be entertained by, and ultimately that brings some kind of strange euphoria and pleasure in this orgy porgy little dance they do there.
I think in a way, I just had this realization. The savage also reaffirms how civilized they are. Because without the contrast, how can they know that they are that civilized, right? There's always something to look down upon as well. And I think in that moment when Lenina sees the Indian, as Stepan said, it's actually how he describes it in the book as well. He uses the term Indian. I think she is in horror and amazement, but also the first thing, like they are so attached to the material that instead of like being amazed by their culture or anything like that, everything that they think it's purely the body, like it's how he looks, it's how the thing, like the pain, everything about the flesh.
I feel like
But I do go on.
Sorry. I was gonna say I
That's
don't
okay.
feel like in my reading of it in that passage that like that Huxley's even like showing or demonstrating in any way a different culture. All of it read to me like it was just squalor and disgust, and in no way like completely bulldozers over any semblance of a difference of history or culture. Is just this grossness, disgusting
Yeah.
rags everywhere, people missing teeth, like greasy black hair. Like, it's in no way, shape, or form interesting or beautiful naturally or any way. It's just gross, bad, evil, savage.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think John becomes so attract. Yeah, I suppose it's true, but I think John becomes so attractive to her because he is that like link between the two worlds, and it's something like there's even a point in the story in which she says like they both become a bit of a celebrity, right? Bernard more of a celebrity than her, but she still gets invited by even more men to like sleep with them and whatever. And she tells Fanny, her friend, that she thinks that she's being invited under false pretenses because all the men want to know if she has lapped with the savage and how it was and like all of that like titillating stuff, and she cannot tell them that. And I think her fascination with John, I think it's very easy to like to think is love, but it wasn't love. I think it's just this like something I don't have. Everyone's asking me about it, and I want to experience that. It's like pure hedonism. That's why when she goes and tries to get him, she can only just express herself through the feelings and through the phrases that she heard from her conditioning. She has nothing beyond that. And I think it's a character. Lenina is such a frustrating character because there's so many opportunities for her to redeem herself, so many opportunities for her to become self-actualized. Like when she's looking at the crematorium, and then she realizes that even after everyone dies, the fertilizer from an epsilon and an alpha plus will grow the same amount of whatever thing is growing. Like it doesn't have like we don't really, we are not that different from each other in the natural world, but she says, "Oh, but isn't it wonderful that we all can be useful even after our death? Like everything's about consumption." Like when you think she's gonna get some form of like humanist realization, she goes back to the conditioning, and I feel like she just represents that, like nothing beyond that. This world, it is that. There's nothing beyond that. There's no escape from it. I spoke a lot, guys, so like go on.
It's almost like a perverted sense of like the Fremen and Dune and how they value water, and when someone dies, they harvest their water for the rest of them to live. And it is similar, but like perverted in the sense of it only is a commodification, the phosphorus that they get out of a dead corpse, so that like consumption and production can continue. I also think with like the wanting and desire between Lenina and John the Savage, like is John's desire for her purely lustful? Is there any value or truth to his desires or any love? And with the fact that she isn't like everybody or like a real personality, what is there to love? And to
Yeah.
me, that comes across as like it has to be pure lust, and that's what his disgust with himself is. Not just the urge and desire, but since there's nothing else to love there because you're not a real thing, you're a manufactured personality.
I think that his perspective for Lenina is probably one because he is still a human being, and maybe it's Huxley's suggestion that also an aspect of humanity is not just vice, but the seeking of virtue in others, in that his natural assumption is that of course there must be a human being within her, because I mean it may just be lust, but I'm inclined to believe that the words of Shakespeare do give him power, and when he is looking over her, he's speaking her name, he has this longing obsession for her, and I think it may be a bit more than that. I may be wrong, but I'm inclined to believe that it's probably a contrast that he does believe that humanity exists on a deeper level because he's a human being.
I think he's just naive. I think because she's the only person that he knows that, like, in the sense of like that has that conditioning. Like besides Linda, his mother, she comes and she's different than the other savages, right? She's like a different person, and I think he sees individuality in that, even though there's none, because that she's unique from his standpoint, from where he's coming from. Like even in that, because when he says the first time before he goes to quote unquote civilization, the world state, he uses the "Oh Brave New World" in a very exciting, naive type of way, and that changes. I think his vision for Lenina in the beginning is very hopeful, and then it changes when she goes towards him, and then after he slaps her. But I still feel like even after he realizes that she's not herself an individual person, I still think that after that, if he had an idealization of her, maybe even a love idealization, after that moment, it becomes just lust. That's what I think, maybe. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it kind of shows the power of art, and similar to like Helmholtz and his intelligence and trying to like he knows there's something out there. Like both the Savage don't quite understand Shakespeare and Helmholtz doesn't quite understand what he's searching for, but like it's just evidence of that quality that humans are searching for, whether it's in art or knowledge or anything like that.
I want to change the topic slightly and keep it on Brave New World, but I want to gauge people's reaction. Does anyone else have the same frustrated reaction that I did when I think about what obstacle golf is? Did that bother anyone else?
Honestly,
Wait.
that sounds kind of cool.
Wait, was obstacle golf the one where they like this tower shoots the ball?
No, that was in condition. We have no idea what obstacle golf is. All we know is that it's golf, but with more apparatus to make it more fun. Same as an escalator sport.
I mean, that just sounds like mini golf. That just sounds like
more. No, imagine what it would actually be. It would be mini golf. I mean, I was going to say on drugs, but on Soma, with more colors, with more obstacles, with more tools.
Like neon lights,
So is that like Top Golf? Have you guys?
It would be like how like you have to go on a motorcycle and like you have to ride the motorcycle while trying to hit your target, and like instead of holes you have to go and it's like freaking like darts where like the golf balls are now your darts, so you have to hit your quote unquote golf balls like darts to the target while riding a motorcycle, while you have to go then do an algebra quiz, while you have to go then play around on the beach, and that's the closest I can come up with. Just improvising, just running like that.
Well, that just looks like you never had Soma before.
A good quick time event.
Yeah, but it
would
definitely
just be
sounds more fun than just regular golf because golf is fucking boring as hell. Just
Yep.
eh.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Nah,
Yeah,
golf is
dude.
boring. Nah, golf
Tyler
is
Wood.
boring.
No,
I agree here.
not Tyler Wood. What's the Tiger Wood?
You
Tiger
see,
Wood
Nah.
made
see
it
this.
cool.
You see, this is the
Right.
one time we actually need Soma, so we can get all these uncultured swines over here to realize how good golf is.
What
Yes,
the fuck,
thank you.
Esteban? Holy shit!
Oh,
That
no,
was,
an absolute.
Go play your obstacle golf.
that was like 3
How about
levels.
no
That was like
any
4
kind of
I'm
levels
golf?
higher.
genuinely
Jesus
shocked.
Christ.
all the things
How
we
about
disagree on,
golf
golf is
How
one of
many
them.
of you find golf entertaining?
Golf is
Okay,
what
well, I
defines
mean,
the
if,
House of
It's a
Tabula
joke, you
Discord.
guys.
I
It's
mean,
a joke.
if you
I like
think
golf.
if you
I like golf,
if,
but I'm not a freaking psychopath. I don't think about
if
golf every day.
oh yeah,
Okay.
well, you know what? I think if we're sharing shit takes on sports, um, I don't know if I believe like MMA is only good because of Conor McGregor. No, I mean, okay, okay, that came out wrong. That came out wrong. What I actually
Explain.
meant to say is like, I think like shit talkers elevate sports to a new level. Like maybe that's what it makes it such a good spectator sport. I think maybe is that
Toxicity
right?
elevates
So
it, is
golf
what
Is
ain't
he's
that it?
shit
saying.
talking.
Is it
Why?
like
Can
Do you,
like
Muhammad
I feel
Ali
like
do you
say
think
like okay.
toxicity elevates? Sorry.
Why we?
I feel like a
Why we
sport
talking
it
about?
just becomes kind of like it's only a this is okay. I don't believe this. You know what? I'm gonna outright say this. I don't believe this before I run myself into the
You're a
ground.
liar. You're
But
a
like
liar.
I was trying to say
No, you
like
love the toxicity, Leo. Be honest. You love the
okay
toxicity.
I love
Uh,
no actually
You like
okay.
being a
you don't even
provocateur.
understand.
You
I'm
like being a
obsessed. I need to drink
provocateur.
the toxicity.
Thank you.
It's like it only be no. I mean okay. What I was trying to say, and I definitely don't
Obstacle
believe this
golf.
because sports are
You see, it's
beautiful and
like
cool in their own right, and they're expressions of ultimate physical
you see,
perfection,
like
and you get to better yourself and yeah. Go ahead
perfection.
and refine yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we.
But like I
Guys,
was trying to say, like maybe shit. No, wait. I'm sorry.
Can
I'm
we?
sorry. What
Can
the
we
fuck?
please?
Sorry. Go ahead.
Can we stay on topic?
Can we please
Can we
stay on
stay on
topic?
topic?
Yeah. You're making me die.
guys,
Sorry to be rude.
what
Yeah,
do you
yeah.
guys think ultimately about Soma? Because Jay was putting like when we're gonna talk about acid. So I was thinking, what is your guys' vision of Soma? Like, how does it look in your head? Not the pill itself, or the tablet, or the ice cream, whatever they take. But
The
what
feeling?
is Soma?
Mm.
Yeah, the feeling of it. Because they talk about the idea of eternity and feeling eternity, but I think it depends on the how many grams you take.
I think
My
it's like
turn.
taking yourself. It's the experience of taking yourself out of your head for a moment. So I describe it as anger, right? And just because I have very personal fucking connections to this, but like the reason I'm like I see myself as such an angry person, and you guys haven't seen it, but like the reason I am, and I just am, and I'm perfectly honest about that, is like when you're angry and it temporarily takes you out of your body. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can put the conflict of life and you can put the blame on life on something in the outside. And that's what I
Yeah.
see trauma as. It's that but happiness. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's this experience of uh it's very much like any drug or any like addiction is like it's not it's not that it gets rid of the problem, it's that it takes you out of even being able to perceive the problem as what it is enough that you feel good but it doesn't work long term. Yeah.
It's like synthetic
Yeah.
bliss.
It's like an
Yeah.
antidepressant or like heroin or something like that. A lighter form
Yeah.
of heroin.
Yeah, I kind of see it as interchangeable as like it can be like an illegal drug or like an opiate or something, but I also think it might also be, like antidepressant pills or something like that.
Mm.
Is like, not as useful as those things can be. I also think there is a part of our society, there is a part of like the government where like, oh, if we can just get this person to not want to off themselves, then they can get back on the assembly line and keep working for us. And yeah, I feel like that might be, I feel like pharmaceuticals might be another part of what Soma is.
Does anyone remember when Tom Cruise was talking about this, like War of the Worlds?
Yes.
I watched it yesterday.
Yeah, it's talking
No
about
way.
antidepressants as soma.
Oh,
I-
yeah.
Yeah, but at the same
Yes.
time, they also mention in the book or somewhere else in the interviews that it's not just antidepressant, but you also want to do, like you want to do work and you still stimulated to do some things, but at the same time, it just calms you down. So like nothing you can do right now, you have to choose either you go one way or another way. Soma gives you both. But I think one of this thing is, sorry, I think Josh, you can go. I can go after you. You're way more passionate.
Okay. I just like to second what Kinotherapy said. That like sometimes you're going to need like antidepressants, anti-anxiety, because a few years ago I was having like just like basic things that were getting like extreme like spasmodic reactions of anxiety. So I really needed like antidepressants, but they can really dull like your
Yeah.
emotions, your perception of the world. So again, it's the same thing I was saying, like way back, like we have like these two sides, like side that kind of like wants soma in the side that wants like the imperfection of the world. In it's a balancing act. I'm not on antidepressants anymore. I'm doing better now, thankfully. But yeah,
Better
that's
drugs.
it. Yeah, hell yeah, Ron.
Yeah,
I
and
think
not that
one
like,
thing. Sorry,
not
with
that like
Soma is that
antidepressants are bad, but yeah.
I don't think it's an antidepressant because you get an extreme amount of pleasure from it, and if you overdo it, it does kill you.
Yeah, well, not like extreme, not like just solely antidepressant, just like pharmaceuticals, you know. And again, I'm not saying that like that's bad. Like I am on
Right.
I am on medication, so like yeah,
Can
I'm not
you-
saying it's bad or like Huxley's saying it's bad, but like you can't like just take a pill. Like you have to go to therapy and stuff, and yeah.
Mhm.
Can you
Yeah.
overdose on soma? Was that mentioned in the book?
no.
Yes.
Because
It
the
talks- his mother, John's mother, because of her indulgence in it, it was going to kill her. I think
short
it,
of
Yeah.
your life a bit.
yeah. I think it.
I
slowly,
found it
shortly led
interesting.
to-
I find it interesting because George, what you mentioned was this idea that being on certain antidepressants and whatnot, they dull your senses, and I think it's just an interesting parallel because we look at that and we often look at like treatments for ADHD and whatnot. But one of the downsides of it is that in a way it takes a part away of the person because they're not necessarily living in their actual reality of what they are. And we always describe it as the dulling of the senses. But what's also interesting is that you would also hear the exact opposite from, say, people that experiment with psychedelics and ayahuasca, is that they also escape from reality, but they do the opposite in that it heightens their senses, and that's more of a reality what they exist in. And that's how I perceive soma, is that it's not natural at all, that it's completely synthetic, but that is the far superior version of reality in which we're all supposed to be in, from the perspective of the people in the civilization.
My nieces and nephews were playing, looking through the game. It's like a board game. It gives you philosophical questions and like religious, whatever, moral questions. And one of them were, would you rather be smart and unhappy or stupid and happy? Like something along those lines. And I think I have this question time to time in my life. And I think the Soma gives you the getaway into being dumb and happy for a bit. Like it's something that gives you a chance of not overthinking stuff, not thinking about yourself, not thinking about tomorrow, not thinking about yesterday, not thinking about your problem. It's just you're there in the eternity. You're there into like whatever you person seeking. I think the Soma gives you whatever you're seeking, and you're just there. You don't think about anything else. You just Soma your way out. Some people Soma away on the beds in the stuff. Some people just go play golf, but it gives you this like happiness that's I don't know, more eternal than just normal happiness, I think.
Do you think it's possible to be dumb and happy? Because wouldn't that also be a case of, you're so dumb that you think you're smart and that's why you're happy? Whereas often,
But that's
if
like
you are smart,
that I think in reality it's a more nuanced questions. But with Soma, I think it gives you that. It gives you the answer of like, I am what I am, or like I am not what I am. Like it's question like your being, do you still have an ego not on Soma or not? But then you don't have these questions. You're just like happy, and it doesn't matter. You don't have to choose between the two. You're just in the
Again,
happiness.
That doesn't sound like happiness. It sounds like pleasure. It just sounds like
yeah, sorry. It just whatever definition. It just means like the dopamine
exactly.
hit that lasts forever.
Yeah, it's
like
just
not the
dopamine.
serotonin that's more lasting. It's like
This
there
is
in the
why-
moment dopamine hit.
This is why, like, one of my new favorite phrases that was coined by Lewis and Luiza is surrogate fun, because like that can easily describe everything in Brave New World that is considered quote unquote making you happy. It's like surrogate fun to me is like going on dopamine, doing drugs, this hedonistic lifestyle that, like, yeah, you might find it so pleasurable in the moment, but it's not meaningful. You're not having actual real fun. Real fun, like, again, real fun is real happiness. Real fun is having a meaningful life where you get to have these experiences of people with the people that you love, with places in life that you love, because life is beautiful. Life is beautiful, and like, yes, of course you will have to deal with very terrible things, but doesn't that's another thing that makes it truly a happy moment, is when you actually have that despair in your life, when you have those unfortunate moments that do make you depressed and sad and angry. It's only when you have those moments that afterwards a happy moment can really uplift your spirit and can really impact you in a way that is meaningful to your life that you'll never forget.
Okay, I think we're 2.5 hours in, and I'm gonna say I'm not 100% agree, and I don't think drugs are 100% evil and bad.
Yeah, agree.
Because one good thing about the word drugs, it's quite ambiguous, and you go from paracetamol, you go to herbals, you go to any other stuff that you can consider drug, which are good drug, and you go to bad drugs and questionable acid and weeds and all the other stuff. Sometimes they're good, like they help people in different stuff. Sometimes they're really bad and they suck and they can ruin people's lives and they can be neutral for some. But sometimes when your life sucks and you're depressed, a bit of acid can lift you up a lot. Like I've seen people who got helped, and of course maybe therapy would have helped, maybe having better childhood would have helped. But sometimes a little bit of drugs gives you a different perspective on life.
I can understand that.
This is where they fucked up. Is like they took the psychedelics from the fucking indigenous people, but they didn't take the shamans. That's what I believe. You're supposed to have a shaman walk you through that shit. You're not supposed to just, like, in fact, in a lot of cultures, it's the shaman who takes the psychedelics and is just sensing what is within you. We should just do that. We should have we should have a shaman class in the United States of America. That's what
there are a lot of those, and they're all a scam.
I mean, is this a stupid thing to say that like anything that you indulge in or put a lot of time in could turn into a soma? Like I could only read and never discuss things with anybody, make my own decisions on life, completely occlude everybody's opinions. Like this is the world that I want to live in, constantly in literature and never, fraternizing with anybody else and sharing their opinions, their perspectives like we are right now. If I only lived in that world, it is a type of soma. And to a lesser extent, it's possibly less harmful depending on what kind of harm you're talking about. It's not necessarily a physical harm, but it is a harm of the soul and the social need that you need in your community. Anything could turn bad, and definitely drugs have a bad rep for a good reason. Because something like smoking a marijuana can be very nice and pleasant, can be conscious lifting. It also very much can be soma. Absolutely, like completely ruin your life, completely do nothing, eat shit all day. I absolutely agree with that. That comes down to personal responsibility. That comes down with knowing yourself, knowing your boundaries, knowing why you're doing something, what you're escaping from, or what the purpose of that thing is in any sense. If I'm just sitting and watching movies all day, I could be like, yeah, I'm studying cinema, but I'm really just escaping from some kind of responsibility that I have for myself. And I'm guilty of that.
I believe there's a word called curation. I think
But that's the problem with soma for books. At some point you run out of good books, and like what do? You either you have to reread the same stuff and then it's boring, or maybe not, or you have to talk, or you have to do something. But with soma it's unlimited, and with TikTok.
Well, in relation to that as well, because like Jay, you were saying, there are instances in which, like, to say, drugs are bad is kind of a sweeping statement. And of course, like, you can bring into pharmaceuticals, you can talk about paracetamol, you can even talk about, treating things with LSD and whatnot. And I agree with that. What I then start to think is, okay, ultimately what we're also talking about is we're talking about the things that we know can inevitably lead us down certain dark paths. I must say, Edward, the way you described it as smoking a marijuana is great. I'm going to use that more. But
Hey, Mario.
It's just especially it can
this idea of we know certain things are bad for us, but then we do make caveats for them. And so like let's now bring it to every other vice or every other sin, whatever you want to call it, that we know would be bad for us. So let's take it to eating McDonald's, let's take it to pornography, let's take it to becoming a hikikomori and removing yourself from society. Ultimately, those things can also, in certain aspects, benefit us. You know, pornography. Oh, it's a case of a sexual release. If you know, if I'm feeling something, you know, why wouldn't I be able to have a McDonald's? It's a certain enjoyment that, in moderation, we can enjoy. And when we then relate that to drugs, is there actually a possibility we could have these things in moderation in society? Because if that's the case, then why wouldn't we also be able to have all these other things in moderation? That's the question.
I think it comes down to it comes down to each individual person, your personality. Are you an addictive person? Are you an impulsive person? Are you a responsible person? I think that, in my opinion, something like a McDonald's is something I would never indulge in. I haven't eaten that kind of stuff in like 15 years. It's like that's just there's absolutely no worth to that. It has to have some kind of worth to it. Even with pornography, there's some kind of worth to it. But pornography to me is also very much a soma, very much a soma. That's very much a way of escaping. And that's not to judge anyone, including myself, for wanting to indulge in that to some degree, with a partner or without a partner. It can have some value, but it ultimately is never going to be enough. And that can be spoken to any of these things. Is it going to be enough? Is it a occasional indulgence, or is there something that has to top that every time, and you get more addicted to it, and you have to do a more extreme thing, a more extreme junk food, a more extreme drug, a more extreme sexual act? What is the limit? That's your personal responsibility. What is permissive in our society? What should be or shouldn't be?
There's a YouTuber, Right Conscious, who made a video on drugs. I feel like a few of you know him, but he was cool because he agrees with me, which is like, I think meditation can give all the benefits of psychedelic drugs or whatever, like acid, ayahuasca. It can give you all the benefits of drugs, but it's like 10 times more profound. It's like there's no even competition between hardcore meditation and drugs. So to me, it's just like, I think it's just less of an excuse, because you're saying with knowing that the only thing that could keep you from doing drugs at that point is if you literally no the only thing that would keep you doing drugs at that point is if you elbow grease.
It's even if you're seeking results at all. I mean, if it's not just ultimately a form of escapism.
Yeah, I don't know. When I was like young, it's hard to say. Like, I don't know if I'm trying to say like the way you're introduced to these things. I don't even know if you should be introduced to drugs. But when I was like a teenager, was it called? When me and my friends used to drink and smoke, it was to get as like fucked up as possible. There was no like, what was it called? Just a little bit or something. The point was like almost like subconsciously we're like forcing each other to like throw up and get like as high as possible and stuff like that. I don't know if someone showed me how to smoke or drink, maybe it would be better. But then again, do I really need that stuff? So it's hard to say. It's like saying, do you need McDonald's in moderation? I don't think so. It's like, it's shit for you. What's it called? It's just highly addictive, just like pornography. I don't think you need pornography to pleasure yourself. You know what I mean? Like, I think you see monkeys doing it. You know what I mean? Like, they're not watching porn. You know what I mean? So I don't know.
I mean, with that pleasure and that meditation, I think like it comes down to your patience, and in this fast beating world, like Are you able to sit quietly with yourself? In either regard, seeking some kind of higher awareness of yourself in the world, or to seeking some kind of pleasure, are you able to sit with yourself that long? Do you need that external stimulus that's like an ultra stimulus? So on and so forth.
Yeah, and I would say like not being able to sit with yourself, that's the opposite of happiness in it. Because if you can't sit with yourself, you can't sit with anything. I don't know how many friends I have who complain about like, dude, I watched like I was gonna like spend all night. I was gonna literally like get into this show. I was gonna watch it. I was gonna binge watch it. I was gonna go from beginning to end. I was gonna stay up all night. I was gonna wake up I was gonna wake up like Saturday afternoon, and I'm just gonna have this huge time with the show, and they watch like 1.5 episodes and they want to kill themselves. You know what I'm saying? It's like you can't have no one can have a single-minded experience anymore. Like everyone has to be on their phone. There's no just being able to fully engage all your senses into one profound experience, because they're like a billion other tiny experiences that scratch the itch, that give you the calories without nutrition, distracting. So it's like I just whatever. That's it. Go back.
Yeah, people are
Luiza,
like bombarded with like stimulus all the time. Like you see people like play video games while listening to a podcast and like music, and it's just like they can't just like or like sit with themselves. They always have to be like fidgeting something. There's so many times when I'm driving around and I see people like watching like TikToks while they're driving, or I'll go
Yeah.
into a public restroom and people are like watching videos full blast while they're on the toilet. I'm just like, Jesus, like fucking give yourself a
Yeah.
second, dude, to
Yeah,
fucking
man.
think. It's like
Poop time
unbelievable.
is quiet time for me.
I
I
know.
don't need a stimulus.
We need to.
has anybody listened to the speech
Honest.
in Berkeley speech by Huxley? The Luisa mentioned in the chat a few days ago.
Oh, not yet. I want to do so like later on today.
Oh yeah,
Like,
of course. So
it's
what did you guys talk about it? Yeah.
I like one of the things that we mentioned is kind of related, not related, is he talks about the people also who are susceptible to addictions and hypnosis, hypnosis.
Hypnosis, yeah.
God. And it's like 20% or something, or it doesn't matter. Just he mentions a number, and then it's like he warns us how dangerous it is that if there's going to be fascist leaders or whatever leaders, and this time they decide to go through these people and brainwash them and use them as whatever. But it just brings us back to the whole that some people are way more susceptible to it, and then I think it's more than just 20%. It's like
I think that's
20%
important.
are super, and then addicted, and then maybe 10% not, and everybody in between just like somewhat can be conditioned in one way or another. And I think it's more and more of us getting conditioned because it's the people who survive and stay as part of the society because they're more valuable ones.
Yeah, I actually have something to say about this. I was a couple of years ago, I had a conversation with Lou in private, the both of us, about the idea of being like eloquent hypocrites. Not us per se, but a lot of people I see, they can point out all the things that are wrong. They can understand all the things that are wrong with the world, but they themselves, just because they understand it, they think that they have a pass. Oh, I understand this. So I'm aware that this is bad. I'm aware this is bad for you. So I can then indulge in it because I'm still aware that I'm indulging something bad. Like, and then I kept saying that, like, it's the idea of like, we have a society of like, yeah, we have 20% of people that are super susceptible to hypnosis and conditioning. But we also have a group of people, it might be like, I don't know, the alpha pluses of the world that are also conditioned in their own way. They're just a bit more aware of it, but they still think that they can indulge in the same type of stuff, you know? It's a bit scary.
Yeah, and it's
So
nicely shown in the book as well. Sorry, somebody mentioned already before here, like the director says, "Oh, an alpha's here, but we're not going to talk about it." But it is part of it. The alphas are conditioned as well.
Yeah, and even like in the when he goes in the room and then he's gonna say it, so he's alluded that they are conditioned in a certain way, but he just doesn't show. Yeah, it's quite scary. I don't think that we can live in a hyper-modern world and not be victims of some form of conditioning. And I think it's our personal duty to try to enlighten ourselves out of it, like, and reject it in some way or another. If it is like food, if it is porn, if it is, I mean, all this stuff, like, it's just, is designed to be hard to escape. One of the things that I see a lot now is like a lot of young guys that are completely addicted to pornography. and they go on those videos like Jordan Pizza and all that, and they give like this sob story. It's very sad. They're like, I cannot escape, I cannot stop doing it, da 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 da. And it's like people want to stop doing the stuff they know is bad, but it's designed to be so alluring that people have a hard time escaping from it. Food is the same. Like food is now is designed to be like mouth pleasure, just pure mouth pleasure and nothing more. It's quite insane.
Like, you know what's interesting is it's also a lot of the time is just they don't know the root cause, because that's one of the biggest things you really need to confront to be able to confront the addiction is like, what else am I getting other than pleasure, right?
Mhm.
So, like for me,
Mm.
like I'm pornography addicted, still am. No going around it. What you see is what I mean. Hopefully not see what the fuck, but like what I'm hearing, what you get, that all that shit is I trauma, bro. Is like genuinely is like there's I think there's still a level of like I'm trying to project the conflict into the world that I saw as growing up because feel safe, like that's what I know as is just authority and you know what I'm saying? So it's like very much, and you know I'm critical of myself in this regard. Like a lot of my thoughts revolve around like why can't I do this? It's because, well, it's not that I don't want to do it. It's that my desire to like just express some sort of power and have some sort of control in the world is greater. So like with me, I'm still trying to work on my therapist. Like, what is like the root cause of the trauma? Like, what do I what like what else is happening there? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I think that you mentioned, finding the root cause for things is very important, and I have a very biased anecdotal thing that I always bring up, and is in relation to this. That people do need educating, and I'm not saying that people need re-educating. I'm saying people just need educating in general, of this idea that there's a documentary, and I will find the name of it, and it was made in between 2011 2013, and there was like a very short couple of years in which a lot of nutrition documentaries were coming out, and they were essentially exposés of the food industry, particularly in the US. And I will find the name of it, and I'll post it. And what was fascinating was the structure of the documentary, because basically what it was an expose documentary in the same way that something like Enron, the Enron documentary is. But it was before Netflix. It wasn't like the cookie cutter thing. It was just one feature length documentary, but it was showing all of these facts and all of this information about the food industry in the US. But what they also did was they also had this participatory aspect of the documentary, in which they had this obese family, and they were basically teaching them about their diet, about the way that they were living. And it was mother, father, and two children. One of the children was like he looked relatively skinny, and but the mother and father were obese, and the other child was really obese. And they were like, I don't understand why this other kid of ours, why is he skinny? And they did a scan on him, and it was a case of, he looks fine, but he has fatty organs, and he's like 10 years old. He has a lot of fat in him. He has he's just literally carrying it better. But what was interesting about the documentary is that the whole thing, they take this family on like this 1 year journey, and they take them around the supermarkets, and they're saying, look, these are carbs, these are fats, look at the things you eat, this is how much calories you have. And yeah, like you say, Leo, there is this idea that the family literally didn't know at all. They had no idea what was going on. But then I always use this because by the end of the documentary, what happened was the family had lost loads of weight. The son was obese, and then he looked healthy again. And they're like, we don't drink soda anymore at dinner. We drink, water with some lemon in it. They had a healthy diet. And then they were like, see, all we need to do is teach people. And the documentary ends on the fucking strangest, weirdest down note in the world, because it like fades to black, and then it's like we return to the family 9 months later, and then it just shows the son that lost all the weight, and like he walks over a hill like a fucking leviathan, and he's just put on all the weight again, and the whole family has put on all the weight again. And then, because the whole premise, clearly they went to make this documentary and say, oh look, all we need to do is teach people. And then it showed, it's like, so yeah, we made this documentary showing that by teaching people we can help them. And then when we left them to their own devices, they all put back on the weight. But the difference is now they actually know all of the nutritional information. And this is what I struggle with about, all we need to do is educate people. I think education is one thing, but then when you are in your home and you're in a society where Soma is available to you wherever you want it, it's very difficult, and all you have to do is basically what John does, which is constantly whip yourself on your back and resist. Oh, thank you, Mo.
I was gonna say,
The
like,
thing
I
is
think.
about
Yeah, go ahead.
advertising. Oh, sorry. I was just going to talk about the leverage of advertising is absolutely insane. There's like almost impossible to fight back against it, just purely pragmatically. So, what I suggest is that it's just best for you to just try and avoid as much social media as you possibly can. Just delete everything. Honestly, just go offline. Go Ted Kaczynski mode. That's my recommendation, honestly.
What about big tech reform?
Big tech reform?
Big tech
Yeah.
reform?
Do you think we
How
can push
would
for
you-
that?
I don't
we
think that's
reform and have more
possible.
AI and we use more power. Yeah, I think it's gonna be great. Yeah,
Yeah.
and the government gives the
It's
money
like-
to build more data centers and more power
it's
plants
like,
to
yeah,
have more
even-
AI. Yeah,
It's like even outside.
How could we possibly reform it?
It's like, yeah.
Realistically, what way could we reform it?
It's like even when I go outside in the streets now, I'm seeing Waymo cars. Like people willingly just go out to.
Silence speaks volumes.
Yeah, it's like fucking. Like it's like it's
Leo?
everywhere now. It's like more everywhere than ever.
Yeah, I was also gonna say a big problem with social media is like, it kind of the more you engage it, and I don't know if this is explored in the book. I kind of have to remember back, but remind me if this was like touched upon in the book. Is the more you do something, the more, and this is why I use the phrase calories without nutrition, the more it like stops you from being able to like pursue that thing in essence. So it's like with anything with like just look at something like empathy. I feel like the the internet gives you so many opportunities to like okay, like this. In the simplest way, it's like to a very universal experience is like you go online, you see you see someone having a birthday party, right? And you're like, damn, they're having a birthday party. Now most people only have like one birthday party a year, right? And that's their fun day. But every day is somebody's birthday. So you go on social media and every day you see, wow, look, this guy fucking had the time of their life. They were hanging out with their friends. They were fucking hanging out. And eventually you're just like, shit. Well, I mean, everyone's having a birthday constantly. Clearly, I'm the one who's being left out. And then you feel shittier. And by the next time someone, and this is why I was trying to, it came out wrong. What that experience I was telling you about, where it's like, you open up to someone with your trauma, and okay, I just went on to a completely different point than my original point, but let me finish this point anyway. Like, the idea is like you open up to someone's trauma, and the immediate thought out of their head is not like reciprocating like what's happening to you. It's like it's complaining about their trauma, and then like eventually being like yours is worse, and like with everybody doing that all the fucking time, danking up the place with their goddamn farts. Like it just becomes but the original point was more like, okay, um if you use porn a lot, even something like OnlyFans, the motherfuckers had the demon in the box there with porn, right? They had the demon in the box in your phone with porn, but now they have like the aspect of a relationship. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you, like I have friends who they like divorced because they were too fucking obsessed with like an OnlyFans creator. You know what I'm saying? There's like it's like the more you use OnlyFans, the more it's like it. Why would you pursue an actual relationship? Why would you do? Oh, this is a funny thing. So if you use Discord too much, and this happened to me. I don't know if you ever met someone like this, but if you use Discord too much, or if you're just on online chats for gaming, and you go out into the real world and you try and make eye contact with someone, the circuits for your fucking brain aren't developed enough to make eye contact. So you get the experience of like someone either looking really intensely at you and just not fucking letting go, and that's like and then you get labeled a creep, and then the other is like, oh, what I do is like, I'm constantly fucking looking at the roof or looking past the person or looking to the side, and the person just comes off like it's spacey, right? So that can happen with porn in terms of like you literally, oh, the more porn you use, the less of a desire you have for an actual relationship, the harder it is for you to have desires at all for anything. So it's like people wonder, like, dude, I'm unmotivated. I feel like I'm living the shittiest life in the world, and it's like, yeah, dude, it's like your brain is plugged up with like all the worst shit, and it's just that's what I'm saying. Is like at least if big tech is not going to form, they should at least motherfucking put some like a digital well-being tools that are actually good default on every fucking phone. That should I feel like at
Okay.
some point
Okay,
we can make that a
let me
law.
suggest something. But
Yeah.
what you just suggested, that doesn't that sound very Brave New World-esque? Here's a device. It can cause so much problems with you, but what we will do through our own benevolence is we're going to put everything on there to protect you so that you only feel the good aspects of it.
Well, no, but I mean, like being able to well, specifically like digital well-being for internet. Doesn't that mean like not using it at all? So being able to like lock your phone, lock applications, or you know what I'm saying is like you have to like this. Is what I'm saying is like you can get that now. We have this now. It's just you actually have to pay for it. And it's stupid. And I had to pay like three fucking services just to get all the porn on my fucking computer and phone blocked. But you know what I'm saying? So it's like that's what I'm saying. I feel like they should at least be able to do that default, no? Because like it's not giving you the tools to like enjoy it at all. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, but like, I mean, I can see that Jay did a snarky little comment about my phone, but I think that this is a very valid thing
I think it's
because,
not
for
snarky.
instance, because for instance, like I have a Nokia 3310. I physically am incapable of accessing anything on my phone. And for me, that is the form of resistance, the form of rebellion that I have, because it's a case of, I think it's a good thing of what you're doing or of finding ways around it, but it is still all of these loopholes around it. And essentially what's happening is that like I can resist anything related to social media and whatnot because it's just not there. It's not in my line of sight. Whereas with John in Brave New World, and I'm not saying this disparagingly, but like with the comparison as you were saying, struggling with pornography and whatnot, it's still just out of your line of sight. The same way with John, he goes to the feelies, for instance, and he does engage in it because it feels good for him, and he has to resist it. The only way that he can resist it is he has to go to the lighthouse on his own, whip himself on the back, and remove himself from it completely. And I think that, yeah, like I'm sure that we can find ways to, protect ourselves from social media, but I think that the only actual resistance is a case of completely, utterly removing ourselves from it and not finding like ways that we can just engage with the good aspects of it. Because to quote Ted Kaczynski, when you speak of all technology, no technology is inseparable from the worst parts of technology. There are no good parts of technology that are inseparable from the bad parts.
Oh,
You
really?
say, you
Okay,
say that about
but
society
wouldn't
too,
that mean?
can't you?
Yeah, but then aren't you like wishing for like the internet to go away entirely?
I suppose
I
you
mean,
could. I suppose that my train of thought would logically reach
mean-
that conclusion.
I mean,
If
that's
you
the
were to
thing.
take it to its logical
It's
extreme
like-
end, then yes,
if that's
I
what some
I
people
wouldn't necessarily deny that.
if that's what some people want, by all means,
And
they should do that.
and I say that because, I mean, ultimately, I know that the internet is not going to go anywhere. Like even if I fucking rallied everyone in the streets,
Yeah.
no one's gonna join my queue. Like it would be a fool's
Utility monster,
endeavor.
basically.
Yeah, but it's like it's the same thing with what happened with TikTok recently. They removed it completely, and everyone is desperate to find one because those barriers have been broken. We exist in, I don't like saying we live in a society, but we live in a society wherein it's just a natural expectation that we have social media. We deserve all of these things. Once you go past a certain threshold, every new extremity becomes the new norm once it's broken past, and that's why I think that the only righteous way to live in, if you use Brave New World as a framework, is what John does, is going and accepting, I can't live in the Brave New World. The only alternative that exists there is the Savage Reservation. It's the place that I have to go. I have to remove myself completely from it, because the moment I give an inch, it will take my whole life away from me. The moment I engage in that orgy porgy, I may as well kill myself, because I will inevitably end up like the rest of civilized man.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna have to
related-
get back to you on that, because I feel like it's a drug. You know what I'm saying? Like I never say get rid of a drug if it has like bad side, or I mean, you know, like an actual like, okay, you go.
Just
You know,
really,
I'm gonna have
why,
to get back to you on that.
maybe somebody knows, silly, not silly question. Why do you think we as humans never get better at this? Like, why, after all these thousands of years of being humans, we're not better at resisting stuff like this? Like, just getting better and knowing the nuances. It's either all or nothing. We cannot just have like, oh, maybe a bit of internet, and in other places as well. Do you think we'll ever get better?
I think that comes back to conditioning, how conditioned we are.
I think it's because ultimately we're stupid animals on a rock, and I don't mean that in a fatalist way.
Yeah.
I think ultimately what we are is half a chromosome away from a monkey flinging shit at each other. We're not that brilliant. We've still got this ancient reptilian brain within us that my fucking cat, who's behind me, has. Like, I probably have more in common with him than we would like to believe. And you know, we can still undergo Pavlovian conditioning. Like we all say, you know, we all have the ability to be conditioned. We're just animals fighting for survival, and I don't think it's necessarily in our nature that we're going to get better. But I also don't think that that's a bad thing. I just think that we have to be wary of it. I just think that if we are incapable of getting better with certain things, then the least we can do is remove all of the things that are going to attract us to the worst aspects of ourselves.
I see. Yeah.
I question, like, I believe in like your personal individualization. I think that's incredibly important. I think it starts with you for everybody. But if I were to become an isolationist and I just cut myself off from that society because I'm rebelling against it or rejecting it, that's a form of nihilism. I'm not helping anybody else out. I mean, ultimately, it's up to everybody else to seek that for themselves. But a lot of us continue to be inspired and encouraged to do so because of other people who have stood up in society and made great works of art, made great improvements in just general living for everybody else. I do think we have the potential to evolve, to raise our consciousness, so on and so forth. It is incredibly discouraging, especially with like hypercapitalism, that it could ever be changed, that it ever will change. Will always be a group of people that are deflecting from society because of their consciousness and becoming more aware and attempting to reach that transcendence, to transcend. Is it always going to be people falling off into the margins individualistically and reaching that on their own, or in a small like village type setting? And with that, if that continues and there's never any societal or cultural pushback, how much worse can it become than it is now? Go ahead.
I believe, I think it's a matter of perspective, and I always say it's like, you know, we mentioned recently, like, I think the last 2 episodes of Acid, I think we've both lost our shit completely, or in a semi-controlled manner. But I always say that, you know, when I physically look out my window, I don't see the world burning. However, I am aware that the world in general is burning, but I don't mind, because I know that this stuff isn't sustainable, and I always repeat this idea. And when I see people, you know, living their life through OnlyFans, or incapable of breaking their worst vices, or living vicariously through these awful destructive aspects, whatever they may be, I just know that yes, that maybe this will get worse, and it will get worse and worse and worse, but there will be a breaking point. the human being cannot withstand this. And so if it completely eradicates society as it currently stands, I don't want that. I don't want that to happen. I would rather that not happen. And that's why, we spend our Saturday nights here speaking to a small handful of people about Brave New World, because I know that this is valuable in some way. And we are communal creatures, and we do need something to spur us on along a bit more. But this notion that I believe things will get worse, they won't in my personal life, and I don't mean that in a selfish way at all. I think that because I'm resisting this world outside that is destroying itself, it's just the case that because I have some level of sovereignty, which in Brave New World, it seems to be the one thing that's stripped away from everyone, even if the world is destroying itself, I still have the means, I still have some willpower that I'm able to resist things. And whether it is like Jay's saying, the joy of being able to plant trees, just this week I went back to the garden, and it's stupid and whatnot. And it is like, it is this thing that people would throw around that we're like, eco-fascist Nazi lifestyle that, oh my god, they grow vegetables. But the thing is, like, hearing those things, it's why it's like I don't care about any of this. And it's why, like, making that Everything is Punk video that I made, and like there's more stuff coming out like that, of this aggressive resistance where my aim is to I'm not being a provocateur, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make people realize that if you are an ideologue, or you fall into some category, or if you don't look at yourself as an individual first and foremost above everything, then you're not being a true human being, because we are all individuals. And I need to create things now that I need to find something that you will disagree with me about, and I have to do that because there's an angst that exists in real life that we need to have. And
I've been typing on the chat.
I may as well be stood on a fucking shoebox.
I'm listening, Lewis.
I've been listening this entire time.
Wait, what?
I'm multitasking. I'm multitasking.
I'm listening.
My comments were about your speech.
You said something you wanted to disagree. Something. What?
No, I'm joking. It's fine. I'm just joking. Yeah, I don't know where the fuck I was going with it. It's just that. It's just this idea. I do think everything will be destroyed, but that's fine.
I ultimately kind of agree with that. I don't hope for that, but like it depends on where you're coming from with that perspective. But maybe that's what we need. Maybe that's, gosh,
Maybe
that turns into a kind of a fashy statement, though. Like, we need a rebirth. The whole thing needs to go down. We need to implode, and the universe needs to like collapse in itself and then be reborn. But that's maybe that's true. I don't know.
Yeah, but maybe it's just that the nature of like time and human life is not, it's not binary. It doesn't go all the way. It doesn't go up or it doesn't go down. Maybe it's just like kind of like the tile says, where where life is cyclical, and any future brings good and bad. You know what I'm saying? So maybe that's just where we're gonna permanently be. Or, I mean, the way society's heading now, we could just end up like you guys know Up, the by and large boat, the fucking we're all just like fat dogs to robots. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, relax.
Right, listen, guys, we're gonna go get some food, and we'll catch you all like maybe this week.
All right.
Bye.
Okay. I'll try to edit.
Bye.
I'll try to edit the
Guys.
recording.
Yeah.
I'll try and edit the recording, you guys. Oh god.